Tonight, you are not standing on Privet Drive. You are standing in the entrance hall of Malfoy Manor. Look up. The ceiling arches like the inside of a cathedral, painted with serpents and constellations older than Hogwarts itself. The portraits along the walls do not smile. They judge. Their pure blood faces track every movement as if weighing the worth of your very blood. This is important because in this version of the story, the boy who lived does not sleep in a cupboard under the stairs. He sleeps in a carved four-poster bed of dark walnut draped in green and silver, across from another identical bed. Across from Draco Malfoy. 2 boys, 2 trunks, 2 wands, 1 day. Harry Potter is not a half-starved secret in a suburban house. He is the second son of one of the oldest wizarding families in Britain, raised beneath chandeliers that have seen generations bow before the Dark Lord. The grave in Godric's Hollow was empty, or perhaps it never existed at all. What matters is simple. Harry never knew the Dursleys. He never wore Dudley's cast-offs. He never learned to make himself small and silent to avoid a fist or a shouted word. Instead, he learned how to hold his shoulders like Lucius, how to listen when Narcissa lowered her voice and said the word muggle as if it were a stain on polished marble. Downstairs, the mark burns on hidden arms as cloaked figures gather in the drawing room. Upstairs, 2 boys practice their sneers in the mirror, turning a single word into a weapon. Remember the canon story for a moment. The narrow bed in the smallest bedroom. The letters that would not stop coming, pouring through chimneys and under doors. The hut on the rock, the crash of the door, Hagrid's massive silhouette, and the first impossible word. Wizard. Now strip it away. Not Hagrid, who had broken down the door to rescue a forgotten child. Not Dumbledore, who had left him on a doorstep with a silent, terrible trust. In this world, there is no letter storm, no desperate flight to a shack in the sea. There are marble corridors that echo with the soft shuffle of terrified house elves. There are white peacocks drifting like ghosts across the lawn while Death Eaters arrive by night, their footsteps muffled by centuries of money and fear. There are whispered meetings in the drawing room where maps are unrolled and names are crossed out, while just above them Harry Malfoy and Draco Malfoy trace patterns of conquest in their schoolbooks, learning that power is not a dream, but an expectation. So we ask the only question that matters. If the child of prophecy is raised in the house of Voldemort's most loyal servant, if his first lullabies are pure blood creeds, and his first stories are tales of dark magic and necessary cruelty, does he grow into the Dark Lord's greatest weapon, or the hidden flaw that will break his empire from within? The night at Godric's Hollow does not change. The scream, the flash of green, the collapsing house, the mark carved into a baby's skin. That remains. What changes is the flight that follows. In the canon story, Hagrid gathers Harry from the ruins and flies toward a neat street of identical houses and trimmed hedges. Here, the sky belongs to someone else. An owl leaves the shattered cottage with a sealed directive not addressed to Dumbledore. Not to Minerva, not to any guardian the Potters would have chosen. This is important. The message flies toward Wiltshire, toward marble and cold silver light, toward Malfoy Manor. There are several ways the boy might cross that threshold, and each carries its own kind of poison. In one version, Lucius Malfoy stands in the minister's office before the dust has settled. Offering a plan wrapped in pure blood logic, the boy who lived is too valuable to leave in a muggle graveyard of a suburb. Better to place him quietly with an old family, under watch, under influence. A ministry cover-up follows, birth records amended by trembling clerks. A new name inscribed, Hadrian Black Malfoy, distant cousin, tragic orphan of a carriage accident no one is permitted to investigate. In another, more desperate strand of the story, Dumbledore seeks leverage. He bargains with Lucius, meaning to keep the child close to his enemies, trusting in blood wards and his own oversight. Not Dumbledore, who had spent a lifetime believing he could steer monsters by standing near them, who had forgotten how quickly children are shaped by the rooms they sleep in and the voices that soothe their nightmares. The grave was empty, but the cost of that emptiness is a childhood surrendered to marble corridors and whispered slurs. Or perhaps the order comes from a darker place. Voldemort, fascinated by the magic that failed to kill the infant, commands his most loyal servant to raise the boy within reach, a living experiment, a future asset or hostage. Lucius bows. Narcissa listens. And a cradle is prepared beside Draco's. Narcissa Malfoy, who had longed for another child, receives a fragile infant with a hidden scar. She sees not a legend, but a feverish boy who clings to her robe with surprising strength. Draco, small and sharp and already learning pride, is told he has a brother now. One more heir to the Malfoy legacy, one more voice to echo his own in the manor's long halls. Does he feel displaced, or does he feel less alone? Secrecy becomes its own kind of dark charm. Glamours blur the lightning bolt into a pale, forgettable line. He is told he is a Black by blood, a Malfoy by grace, a survivor of an accident so terrible it must never be described. New records, new family tapestries, a carefully embroidered lie. Not Hagrid, who had once carried the real Harry out of ruin. Not Sirius, who had once sworn to be his guardian. None of them know the boy is alive beneath another name. And so, when the Hogwarts letters come, when the sorting hat lowers over his head, it is Hadrian Malfoy who walks forward. The canon moments will return, Diagon Alley, the train, the houses, but each will tilt, refracted through green and silver. The unravelling begins the moment he sits beside Draco and looks at Gryffindor with Malfoy eyes. The grave in Godric's Hollow was empty. This is the thing that almost no one knew. Not Dumbledore, who had signed his name with a steady hand on a different kind of grave entirely. A document that buried a living child inside a serpent's nest. In this universe, he does not lose track of Harry. There is no muddled night. No misplaced baby passed from arm to arm and vanished in the confusion of celebration. Instead, there is an office high in the castle, the air thick with candle smoke and old magic, and a parchment between two men who should never have been allies. This is important. Lucius Malfoy comes draped in contrition. He speaks of unity, of reconciliation after the war, of pure blood families stepping forward to prove that the old ways can coexist with Dumbledore's new order. He offers Malfoy Manor a sanctuary for the boy who lived, a place of security and wealth and ancient wards where no Death Eater would dare trespass without his leave. On the surface, it is a generous plan, almost noble. Beneath the polished words, his true intention coils. Lucius sees not a child, but a symbol, a living charm he might bend into a banner for pure blood supremacy. If he can shape the boy's story, if Hadrian Malfoy grows to believe that power and safety come only from lineage and gold, then the future will kneel to the Malfoy name. And if Voldemort ever rises again, the boy becomes something else, a hostage, a bargaining chip. a replica of loyalty Lucius can place between himself and the Dark Lord's wrath. Dumbledore listens. He already knew the Ministry would turn Harry into a spectacle, a grave of expectations built around a child who had not yet spoken his first word. He had seen what fame did to young wizards. He had seen what neglect did too, so he chooses a third path, colder and more calculated than either. Let the boy grow under the Dark Mark's shadow, he thinks, where every move can be watched, every influence measured. Perhaps, if a Malfoy child and a Potter child share a nursery, Slytherin will learn a different kind of loyalty. He signs. Ink dries. A quiet sound lost beneath the ticking of the instruments on his shelves, yet it alters everything. The wizarding world rejoices in the streets, raising glasses to a baby they imagine safe in some sunlit cottage. They do not see the blackened skull once burned above Malfoy Manor's roof. They do not hear the echo of oaths spoken in its halls. Not Hagrid, who had expected to carry Harry to a modest home and a simple life. Not Sirius, who had planned godfatherhood, not guardian to a legend. None of them know the boy will fall asleep each night beneath portraits that whisper about bloodlines and power. This is the hidden pact at the center of the new timeline. A headmaster's gamble, a patriarch's ambition, a child's fate sealed in ink. When Snape looks into Hadrian Malfoy's eyes, when Voldemort learns where the boy has been raised, this buried decision will rise like a ghost. What happens when the weapon destined to end the Dark Lord has been forged in his most faithful servant's house? Not a cupboard. Not a broken cot in a spider-haunted space beneath the stairs. In this story, Harry's childhood unfolds beneath vaulted ceilings and along echoing marble corridors, where his footsteps sound too small against stone that has watched Malfoy's walk for centuries. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. The boy who should have grown up on Privet Drive is instead a quiet shadow in Malfoy Manor. This is important. His earliest memories are not of dust and locked doors, but of polished floors so clean they mirror his face back at him, a pale replica framed in silver light from tall, narrow windows. When he wanders, portraits track him with cool, assessing eyes, and when they think he is out of earshot, they mutter about bloodlines, about proper magic, about the danger of letting strange blood root too deeply in ancestral stone. Where Petunia Dursley would have starved him of affection and food alike, Narcissa Malfoy starves him of something subtler. She does not scream. She does not slam doors. She dresses him in tailored robes the color of deep forests and storm clouds, smooths his hair with elegant distant hands, and corrects his posture with a single gloved finger pressed between his shoulder blades. Love here is curated. Controlled, she teaches him which names to revere and which to despise. Tracing them on parchment with his small hand under hers, Black, Malfoy, Lestrange, Weasley, spoken with a quiet curl of her lip. Muggle, said like a bruise. Draco comes into his life not as a rival, but as a mirror held too close. Two blonde boys, one by blood, one by fate, learning to move through the same rooms, to breathe the same charged air. They duel first with toy wands that spark harmless light, each flare a rehearsal for a darker future. They sit cross-legged on a nursery carpet while a governess reads them stories in which muggles are the villains, clumsy and cruel, and they learn to laugh at the right moments. When Lucius enters, the room tightens. Approval is a rare, brittle charm, bestowed sparingly, and the boys feel it like sunlight in winter. Who will stand straighter? Who will quote the old laws more precisely? Who will he look at when he says, coldly proud, that the Malfoy line remains untainted? Lucius does not believe he is raising a monster. He believes he is preserving civilization. In his mind, this is a grave duty, not a cruelty. The boy the world calls Harry Potter is, to him, a weapon that must be refined, a legacy that must be guided. Molding Hadrian Malfoy is part of a larger plan to keep the old ways alive, to ensure that when the Dark Lord calls, his household will answer with disciplined, unquestioning strength. And so the tragedy takes a different shape. Harry is not unloved. He is loved into a lie. His sense of self wrapped in green and silver long before he ever sees the Hogwarts Express. When the hat touches his head, will it hear his own voice at all, or only the echo of marble corridors and whispered lessons about who deserves to live in the light of magic and who belongs outside the gates? The hat will hear those echoes, because the world that shaped them is already in place long before Hogwarts. No cupboard, no spiders, no owls hammering against barred windows in a last desperate attempt to deliver the truth. At Malfoy Manor, the letters do not rebel. They arrive as everything else does here, in order, on time, on a silver tray borne by a trembling house elf who knows better than to spill the pumpkin juice. 2 envelopes, heavy cream parchment, green ink glinting in the morning light, are set between the boys' plates as though Hogwarts itself were merely another course at breakfast. This is important. There is no storm, no chaos, no sense that magic might disobey the adults in the room. The institution bends politely toward the family that has always assumed it owns a share of its stone. In this story, Harry's first wild surge of magic is not a panicked plea to escape a Muggle zoo. It happens beneath a chandelier older than some bloodlines, in a room where every object has a history and a price. Draco sneers, a childish barb about Harry's hair or his hand-me-down robe, and Harry's temper flickers. The crystal decanter on the sideboard explodes without warning, shards spinning like cursed snow. A house elf is thrown backwards into the wainscoting with a crack of displaced air. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but the danger is very alive here. Lucius rises, not in horror, but in appraisal. Power, he says, is nothing to fear if it is properly guided. His hand on Harry's shoulder is heavy, possessive, almost proud. Narcissa is the one who notices the elf's bruises, the way its fingers shake as it tries to gather broken glass without bleeding on the carpet. She orders the wounds healed, voice cool and distant, but her eyes linger on Harry's face a moment too long, as if searching for a shadow she cannot yet name. Not Hagrid, who had battered down a door in a storm to tell a neglected boy he was wanted. Harry's introduction to the wider wizarding world is filtered instead through drawing rooms thick with perfume and cigar smoke, through masked guests who speak of the ministry as if it were a chessboard and of Muggle-borns as if they were a contagion. Death Eater remnants drink brandy and talk in careful code about raids that are now called incidents, about a Dark Lord whose absence feels less like defeat and more like an unfinished plan. When Harry asks questions, it is Draco who answers first, about the Weasleys and their disgraceful poverty, about Dumbledore, that mad old man who lets anyone into Hogwarts, not Dumbledore, who had once sworn over another child's crib that he would do better this time. Harry does not hear that vow. He hears Draco's certainty, feels the smooth authority of a story told 1,000 times at this table. And yet, something resists, the way a house elf flinches when Lucius reaches for his cane. The offhand remark about a Muggle-born student who disappeared after an inquiry. A guest's laugh that sounds too much like delight at someone else's suffering. These moments do not fit the elegant replica of the world he has been given. They lodge like splinters beneath the skin of his belief. He does not argue. Not yet. But the questions he does not voice begin to collect, quiet and heavy. Waiting for the first train ride out of the manor, waiting for stone walls and shifting staircases and a headmaster's gaze to show him that magic can illuminate as well as wound. The letters came on a silver tray. The doubt will not be so polite. The letters came on a silver tray. The doubt came with them, and in the spaces between inked lines and wax seals, an absence waited, patient and unnamed. In another story, a great black dog would have crossed an ocean of despair for the boy in the cupboard. In this one, the boy is not in a cupboard. He is in a manor, behind peacocks and iron gates and wards that remember dark marks. This is important, because Sirius Black, who once howled in a stone cell until his voice was a ruin, cannot simply knock on the front door of Malfoy Manor and ask to see his godson. The world never stops to consider what that means. The Daily Prophet does not print the hunger in Sirius's eyes when he sees a photograph of two blonde boys at a Quidditch match, one with a face that is wrong in a way he cannot yet name. It prints something else. Profiles of Lucius Malfoy's reformed philanthropy, photographs of Narcissa at charity galas, carefully curated stories of donations to St. Mungo's and committees on Muggle-Wizard cooperation. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but the paper is very full. In Nocturne's back alleys and the darker corners of the Leaky Cauldron, the truth sounds different. Here, people lower their voices when they say Malfoy. Here, they say Lucius never stopped serving. That the manor's ballroom is a replica of a court long fallen, waiting for its king to rise again. They knew this was not over. They knew the mark on his arm never truly faded. Harry grows up in the quiet between those two stories. Public redemption. Private fear. He walks marble corridors and feels a hollow echo under his ribs, as if some charm has been cast on his life with one essential word missing. No one speaks of James. No one speaks of Lily. There is a photograph locked away somewhere, but he never sees it. He does not know why the name Sirius Black makes Lucius's hand tighten on his cane. Not Sirius, who had once broken a prison for a glimpse of his godson. Not Sirius, who had sworn at a kitchen table that he would never abandon James's child. Not Sirius, who had paced a cell and counted days by the memory of a baby's laugh. The manor's wards taste his animagus form, taste the Azkaban mangled magic in his blood, and whisper one word to the dark protections layered there: intruder. Instead, there is another old man, one who does knock, but rarely. Dumbledore comes to the manor like a visiting magistrate, all courtesy and lemon sherbet smiles that never quite reach his eyes. Not Dumbledore, who had once placed bodies in a grave with his own hands and believed the story was finished. Now he sits in Lucius's drawing room, steam curling from his teacup, and watches Harry and Draco play wizard chess with the stillness of a man measuring the consequences of a plan he no longer trusts. He speaks in generalities, in hopes for unity, in the importance of house friendship. He does not say, "I put you here." He does not say, "Lily was a charms prodigy, and the protection around your name is older than you know." Harry feels the weight of that gaze like a hand on the back of his neck and cannot explain why it makes him colder than the Manor's dungeons. So his childhood narrows. Not Dursley's, with their locked cupboards and shouted hatred. Not Hagrid, who had crashed down a door with a pink umbrella and a birthday cake. Not Sirius, who had once offered a home and a godfather's reckless love. Only Malfoy's. Only Manor. Only a life curated by people who have every reason to fear what Harry might become if he ever learns the whole truth. The war moves outside the windows. Names vanish from the prophet's marriage announcements and appear in its obituaries. Lucius leaves at night and returns smelling of smoke and grave dirt and old triumphant magic. No one explains. Harry hears the word prophecy once in a hissed argument behind a closed door and feels the world tilt. By the time the Hogwarts letter arrives, there is a shape in his mind where a godfather should be. A door that has never been knocked upon. A story that has never been told. And on the first night in Slytherin, when the Sorting Hat whispers about choices and courage and the pull of blood, something else whispers too, older and more dangerous. If no one came to claim you, it asks, who do you belong to now? He belongs, for now, to the boy across from him. The Hogwarts Express cuts through rain and mist, a red vein threading the countryside, and in a private compartment near the middle of the train, two pale boys sit like mirrored replicas. Draco Malfoy, all sharp chin and rehearsed disdain. Hadrian Malfoy, quieter, the same fine bones arranged around a different scar, hidden beneath a flawless glamour Narcissa renews with a practiced charm. This is important. Pansy Parkinson has draped herself along the seat beside Draco, already laughing too loudly at his every slight. Blaise Zabini watches from the corner, self-contained, eyes like dark glass. When a cluster of red-headed boys passes in the corridor, their laughter spilling in, Draco's lip curls. Harry's does too, almost on instinct. He has been taught that Weasley is a name spoken with pity and contempt. That threadbare robes are a moral failing, not an economic fact. A bushy-haired girl peers in, hopeful, asking about an empty seat. Draco's refusal is silken and cutting. Harry's silence is worse. Somewhere beneath layers of Malfoy poise and pure blood prejudice, something twists. But he has been raised on Lucius's lectures about blood, on stories where Muggle-borns are the crack in the grave of wizarding greatness. He has been told this is the truth. The hat will remember this compartment. In another story, it rested on the head of a thin, bewildered boy who begged against Slytherin, whose courage was raw and unshaped, whose loneliness made him porous to other kinds of light. Here, when the Sorting Hat is lifted and the hall holds its breath, it finds a mind already organized around ambition, already fluent in the language of advantage, already steeped in Malfoy pride. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, but the space inside this child is not. It is full of plans that are not his own. Hadrian Malfoy. The name ripples through the great hall like a charm cast without a wand. The scar does not show, the glamour holds. Not Dumbledore, who had traced every prophecy line about the boy who lived, suspects the truth sitting in plain sight. Not Hagrid, who had once carried a different baby from a ruined house, would recognize the set of the jaw. Not Sirius, who had screamed his innocence into stone walls, will hear this name tonight. The hat barely brushes dark hair before it decides. There is no plea for Gryffindor, no half-formed resistance, only a cool, coiled readiness. Slytherin, the word falls like a verdict. At the Gryffindor table, benches tighten. Ron Weasley's face hardens, freckles standing out against a sudden flush as the boy who had just sneered at him walks toward green and silver. To Ron, he is simply another Malfoy, another arrogant pure blood who looked at his family like they were dirt. At the staff table, Severus Snape's eyes narrow, the resemblance to James flickering beneath Malfoy polish. He hides the shock behind a curl of his lip, already recalculating. A Potter in Slytherin, and yet not a Potter at all. Harry slides onto the bench beside Draco. Applause rises around him, a cocoon of approval that both protects and poisons. A boy who might have worn red and gold, who might have found noisy, imperfect love at that crowded table, is instead folded into a house that will sharpen his mind and starve his mercy. Where will loyalty lead him when destiny sits at the wrong table? Snape watches the green and silver table like a man seeing a ghost sit down in the wrong pew at a funeral. The scar is hidden beneath perfect Malfoy tailoring. The eyes are not. The first potions class is a replica of another life. Dungeon light, rows of cauldrons, the soft hiss of simmering magic. His roll call reaches the name that should not exist in Slytherin. Harry Malfoy. A pause. A faint, involuntary intake of breath. A boy with James's face and Lily's eyes looks up from beside Draco, Malfoy crest gleaming on his chest, and answers yes sir with pure blood polish instead of Gryffindor defiance. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow, and Severus Snape does not know it. This is important. What he does know is this. The boy in front of him should have been a Potter. The story should have been simple. Hatred for the father, penance for the mother, distance from the son. Instead, the questions he once hurled like knives at a Gryffindor are redirected, almost mechanically. Potter, he stops, corrects himself with effort. Malfoy, where would you look if I asked you to find me a bezoar? In canon memory, the question is a trap. Here, it is a test. Harry answers smoothly, because Lucius has drilled him on ingredients and antidotes as part of a larger plan. In the stomach of a goat, sir, no stumble, no blush, no laughter from Slytherin, because they expect competence from a Malfoy heir. Snape's hatred of James collides with three loyalties at once, to Lily's memory, to the house he rules, and to the man who now claims this child as son. Lucius Malfoy has gold, influence, and secrets. Lily was a charms prodigy, and her eyes stare back at him from a boy wearing Lucius's name. The combination is intolerable. It is also irresistible. So he shows favoritism, but it is edged like a blade. When Harry's potion thickens a fraction too quickly, Snape is there, cloak whispering over stone, hand closing over Harry's wrist to adjust the stir. Counterclockwise, you will scorch the aconite. His voice is soft, almost proprietary. He deducts no points. He offers no public rebuke. Draco, who has made a smaller error, receives a curt, cutting remark. The class learns in a single lesson that Harry Malfoy is shielded from humiliation, yet subject to an exacting standard no one else bears. Harry, raised on Lucius's assurances that Professor Snape is a trusted ally, reads this as stern mentorship. At first, Snape corrects his wand movements with unnerving precision, lingers a heartbeat too long on the resemblance in his face, calls on him again and again as though proving something to an invisible jury. Harry feels chosen. Then, on a day when his answer is imperfect and his expression too like James's smirk, he catches it, a flash of naked loathing in Snape's eyes, gone as quickly as it appears, buried beneath professional chill. Not Dumbledore, who had once trusted Snape with a different boy, but Snape himself now stands at a crossroads. In a house where his word is law and his favour a shield, what does he make of Harry Malfoy? A prized weapon honed in green and silver to turn against the headmaster's quiet schemes, or the living reminder of a promise to Lily that he cannot, must not break? Dumbledore sits beneath the enchanted ceiling as the first years file in, the candlelight turning their faces into a procession of possible futures. The hall breathes expectant, the hat sings of choice and cunning and courage. And then Harry Malfoy. The name moves through the great hall like a charm gone wrong. Short, sharp, cutting, a few gasps, a rustle of whispered questions. At the staff table, Dumbledore's hands fold on the polished wood, knuckles whitening for the briefest private moment. He watches the boy walk, Malfoy posture, Potter eyes, a living contradiction in tailored black. The grave was empty, he thinks, not of Godric's Hollow, but of the plan he once believed would keep this child safe. This is important, he had argued in quiet conversations with himself, that proximity to darkness might inoculate rather than infect. That if Harry grew up inside a serpent's nest, he would learn the language of snakes well enough to survive them. Now he watches Harry sit beneath the sorting hat, sees the fractional tilt of the boy's mouth as it whispers in his ear. There is no struggle this time. No desperate refusal of Slytherin. The brim barely brushes his hair before it shouts Slytherin, and the table in green and silver erupts in polite applause. No roaring triumph. Just satisfied acceptance, as if a long-laid story has reached its inevitable line. Dumbledore notes the details, the way Draco claps first and loudest, the way Harry's shoulders relax when he reaches his brother, the way he laughs, later that evening, at a muttered joke about mudbloods, the sound carrying up to the staff table like an accusation. He had once told himself that understanding darkness required a close study of its seductions. Tonight, he wonders if he has simply delivered a lion to the serpent and called it wisdom. Not Dumbledore, who had moved pieces on a board for too many years, will admit his doubt aloud. Instead, he begins the slow work of course correction. Extra invitations to tea in his circular office, where the portraits pretend to sleep and the silver instruments hum with restless magic. Subtle questions about Malfoy Manor, about Lucius, about the way the boys are spoken to when the drawing room doors are closed. He offers Harry carefully chosen fragments of another life. A Quidditch story in which James Potter broke curfew to rescue a terrified first year. A memory of Lily standing in his office, furious and brilliant, arguing for Muggle-born protections with a conviction Lucius would call dangerous. Lily was a charms prodigy. But what Dumbledore emphasizes is not her skill, it is her mercy. Harry listens, always polite, always a little distant. He has been taught that Dumbledore is a manipulative radical, a man who dresses fanaticism in lemon drops and twinkling eyes. So he files away the contradictions, the tenderness in these stories that does not match the grave his family has described. He is not yet ready to call anyone a liar. But he is no longer certain who owns the truth. Each year the distance grows. Each summer, Malfoy Manor tightens its grip with new stories, new scars, new whispered plans spoken under the dark mark's shadow. Dumbledore watches the boy return thinner, sharper, more controlled, and understands that delay is itself a decision. He knows now that when the truth finally breaks about that night, about that empty grave, about who Harry Malfoy really is, it will not simply change allegiances, it will shatter them. The only question is who will still be standing when the pieces fall. The grave was empty. This is the thing that nobody at Hogwarts knew as candles floated above the Halloween feast and pumpkins glowed like watchful eyes over 100 unsuspecting children. They laughed, they reached for treacle tarts and pumpkin juice, while beneath the stone and song another kind of magic waited, heavy and ancient, already bending the night toward a different story. Quirrell burst into the great hall, turban askew, face white with a terror that was not entirely feigned. He stammered the words that would crack the evening in half, a troll in the dungeon. For one suspended heartbeat, the castle held its breath, and then the hall dissolved into shrieks and scraping benches as Dumbledore's voice boomed and the prefects began to herd their houses away in frightened clusters. Slytherins moved like a single-scaled creature toward the dungeons, green and silver streaming. Harry Malfoy moved with them. At Draco's shoulder, at Snape's back, perfect, controlled, a black-robed replica of Lucius's composure in crisis. This is important. Because in that tight ordered march, in the press of bodies and the sour smell of fear, a single stray sentence slipped through the noise like a curse. Granger's missing. No one's seen her since Charms. She's Muggle-born. They said the troll was near. The words struck him harder than the shouted orders. Muggle-born. Missing, troll, Harry did not know Hermione Granger, he knew only her name, the way it had already become a quiet insult in the Slytherin common room, a symbol of everything Lucius Malfoy's lectures told him was wrong with the world. Mudblood, interloper, mistake, Draco's hand closed on his sleeve. Come on, Father will hear if we wander. Trust the professors. That's the plan. Harry should have obeyed. Every story he had been given, every grave lesson about blood and loyalty demanded obedience. But another voice rose up, older than Lucius, older than the Manor's cold corridors. Power means you can act. So why are you walking away? Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated a dozen speeches about responsibility, could have explained why the thought felt like memory instead of impulse. He stopped. The Slytherin line flowed past him like a river parting around a stone. Draco hissed his name, eyes wide with a fear that was not only for himself. "I have to see," Harry said. The words surprised him with their own steadiness. You can come or not. Pattern broke. Plan shattered. He turned and ran against the current. Draco followed, cursing under his breath, terror and something like awe warring in his expression. They moved through corridors that echoed with distant thuds, following the scent of damp stone and something fouler. A graveyard stench of old blood and unwashed skin. Around one corner, then another, until they found her. Hermione Granger was pressed against a cracked sink, wand shaking in her hand, eyes fixed on the mountain of grey flesh lumbering toward her. The Trolls' Club rose, slow and inevitable. Harry did not think. He moved. The charm that tore from his throat was half remembered from class, half instinct. Raw magic flaring brighter than it had any right to. The club wrenched sideways, smashing stone instead of bone. Draco's spell followed, less precise but desperate, shards of porcelain exploding like shrapnel. It was clumsy. It was enough. When the professors arrived, Snape's eyes like knives, McGonagall's lips a bloodless line, they found a scene that did not fit any Malfoy mould. Harry standing between a muggle-born girl and a fallen troll, shoulders squared, face pale but unflinching. Slytherin House whispered for weeks. Reckless, contaminated, dangerous in the wrong direction. Draco swung between anger, how could his brother risk everything for her, and a fierce, grudging pride that he could not quite name. Snape said little, but he watched Harry with a new, measuring stillness, filing away the single inconvenient truth: this boy, raised under the Darkmark's shadow, would bleed for someone his family despised. Not Hagrid, who had once carried a different child from different ruins, understood what that might mean for the war to come. And somewhere far away, in a cottage protected by charms no one yet suspected, two people who were supposed to be dead felt their monitoring spells spike in sudden, terrible brightness and knew that their son had stepped onto a path no Malfoy plan could fully contain. The first time Harry Malfoy left the ground, it was not in terror from a falling Remembrall. It was in anger. The grave of his old life was empty. The name Potter lay buried, but the boy who lived wore green and silver, and the sky over Hogwarts was about to learn what that meant. It happened in a way that felt almost like a replica of another story. A shouted insult, a flash of red hair, a clumsy Gryffindor first year sending Draco sprawling. Harry's hand closed around a dropped practice quaffle, and before anyone could speak, he was in the air, the broom an extension of a body that had been caged too long. He moved with a kind of feral precision, banking so sharply that the watching students gasped. This is important. Not Dumbledore, who had once imagined a different boy on a different broom, saw him first. It was Madame Hooch, eyes narrowing against the pale autumn light, and Snape, cloak billowing as he stepped from the shadow of the stands, expression unreadable and suddenly intensely alert. Snape knew Quidditch. He knew James Potter's arrogance on a broom, and he knew this was not that. This was colder. Controlled, a talent honed by years of Malfoy tutors and private pitches, now revealing itself in public for the first time. Within a week, rules were bent, precedents quietly adjusted, and Harry Malfoy stood as Slytherin's new Seeker, a first-year anomaly sanctified by staff signatures and Snape's soft, dangerous approval. The visual inversion was almost obscene in its power. The boy who lived, streaking across the November sky in Slytherin colours, green and silver cutting through the pale sun, the serpent crest flashing each time he rolled his broom to avoid a bludger. Slytherins roared his name. Gryffindors booed, a wall of red and gold hostility. Somewhere in the stands, Ron Weasley muttered about typical Malfoy cheating, as if the surname itself were a foul. From across the pitch, Hermione Granger watched, her knuckles white around a borrowed pair of binoculars. She saw only a Malfoy smirking when Wood fumbled, a Malfoy circling like a predator above her house, a Malfoy whose victory would mean another round of Slytherin jeers in the corridors. She did not see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes when the snitch brushed his fingers. The question he did not know how to ask: who am I doing this for? His fame inside Slytherin grew like a charm-fed fire. Victories against Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, a brutal, rain-slick win over Gryffindor that left red-robed players mud-streaked and furious. Draco's pride blazed, his brother was a star, the name Malfoy sung from the stands. Yet beneath the applause, something twisted. Harry's face, not Draco's, on whispered prophet predictions. Harry's catches, not Draco's marks in the record books. The rivalry that had once been a game between brothers hardened into something sharper. And still, Harry was lonely. At night, returning from celebrations in the Slytherin common room, he would pass the portrait hole to Gryffindor, where muffled laughter and the crackle of a fire seeped through stone. He imagined a life on the other side of that wall, imagined sitting with the red-haired boy who hated him and the clever muggle-born girl who glared at his crest as if it were a curse. The grave was empty, but so often was his victory. He was alive in the sky. On the ground, surrounded by admirers who loved his name and his skill, he felt the slow, cold realization settle in his bones. Fame had given him a house, but not a home. And far away, behind protections no one at Hogwarts yet understood, two watching parents adjusted their plan, seeing that Quidditch glory had not saved their son from the oldest Malfoy inheritance of all. Isolation. It was what drove him out of bed that night, long after the common room fire had sunk to embers behind the serpent-carved mantel. The castle above slept. The dungeons did not. Stone held echoes, and Slytherin stone held secrets. Harry walked without knowing where he meant to go. His feet knew the turnings of the Slytherin corridors now, the familiar chill, the faint scent of damp and potion smoke, the way torchlight slid like pale green water over the walls. He passed the entrance to the common room, past Snape's office, deeper into a corridor no prefect bothered to patrol. This is important. The places no one watches are the places where magic waits. The door was half-rotten, iron hinges furred with rust, as though the room beyond had not been opened in decades. When he pushed, it yielded with a soft, exhausted sigh. Inside, dust lay like ash across abandoned desks, and at the far end, tall enough to dwarf him, stood a mirror in a claw-footed frame. He knew at once that it was not ordinary. The air around it felt thinner, stretched like skin over bone. Ancient runes crawled along the arch, half buried under grime. Harry stepped closer and the room fell away. The grave was empty. Not the marble one in Godric's Hollow that he had been shown in carefully curated photographs, but the invisible grave inside him where a mother and father should have been. In the mirror, that grave filled. James and Lily Potter stood there, unmistakable from the censored portraits Dumbledore had permitted him to see. James's hair was as unruly as Harry's. Lily's eyes were his own. But they were not alone. Lucius and Narcissa flanked them, elegant and pale, as if a formal family portrait had been torn in half and then pressed back together by an unsteady hand. Draco was there too, shoulder to shoulder with a lanky red-haired boy Harry did not know, both laughing at some unheard joke. Behind them, a crowded tableau, Malfoy silver and Potter red, crests overlapping, generations of faces that should have glared across a battlefield instead, standing close enough to touch. In the mirror, James's hand rested on Lucius's shoulder with easy familiarity. Narcissa and Lily exchanged a look of shared understanding, not rivalry. Two mothers, one son. No choice required. Harry's throat burned. He lifted a hand. The boy in the glass moved the same way, but he was different. His robes bore both crests stitched together, Slytherin green-edged with Gryffindor gold. He was not divided. He was not pretending. How could this be his deepest desire when his whole life had been a lesson in separation? Pure blood and half-blood, dark and light, Malfoy and Potter. He recognized his parents from the portraits, from Dumbledore's careful, incomplete story, yet here they opened their arms to him beside the family that had raised him, as though the plan had never required a fracture. "Curious thing, desire," said a quiet voice behind him. Harry spun. Dumbledore stood in the doorway, robes absorbing the dim light, eyes not twinkling but grave, reflective, as if the mirror had reached him too. "Professor," Harry managed, the words scraping out of him. Dumbledore's gaze flicked to the glass, then back. "The mirror of Erist," he said, as though naming an old adversary. "It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest wishes of our hearts. This is important. Many have lost themselves in it, chasing replicas of lives they cannot truly live." Harry swallowed. "It's wrong," he said. "They would never, all of them together, would they not?" Dumbledore's tone was almost gentle, but there was steel beneath it. "Or is it that someone has taught you that such a thing is impossible?" Harry thought of Lucius's lessons, cold and precise, of Narcissa's quiet, conditional warmth, of Draco's brittle laughter, of the way Dumbledore had shown him his parents' faces like artifacts in a museum, framed by pity and distance. "Why did you show me those portraits?" Harry asked. "Only those. Only the safe ones." For a heartbeat, something unguarded flickered in the old man's face. Not Dumbledore, who had always seemed certain, unshakable, architect of every plan. Here he looked almost tired. "Because you deserve to know they were alive in more than legend," Dumbledore said softly. "And because there are truths that once seen cannot be unseen, even in a mirror." Harry glanced back. In the glass, the two families had drawn closer together. James's hand now rested on Lucy's other shoulder. Draco and the red-haired boy Weasley, some buried instinct whispered, had flanked him, one on each side, as if there were never going to be a war about where he belonged. "My heart doesn't know what it wants," Harry said, almost to himself. "Oh, I think it does," Dumbledore replied. "I think it has known for a very long time that your story is not as simple as the one you have been given." The words landed with the weight of prophecy. Lily was a charms prodigy. Harry remembered being told she had changed the course of a Dark Lord's curse. What else might she have changed? What else might have been planned, hidden beneath graves and legends and Malfoy oaths? Dumbledore stepped between Harry and the mirror, the reflection of that impossible united family breaking on the line of his shoulders. "You must not come seeking this again," he said. "The mirror shows desire, not destiny. To stand too long before it is to forget which is which." "But if it shows my heart," Harry whispered, then somewhere it could be true. Couldn't it? Dumbledore did not answer. Silence, in that moment, was more revealing than any speech. Not Sirius, who had once sworn to die for James, not Hagrid, who had carried an orphaned baby through the ruins, not even Dumbledore himself had told Harry everything. That much he suddenly knew. Dumbledore only laid a hand on his shoulder, brief and heavy. "There will come a time," he said, "when you must decide which truths you can live with, and which you cannot." When Harry finally let the dungeon door close behind him, the ache in his chest was no longer a simple yearning for parents he had never known. It was sharper, stranger, a wordless longing for the boy in the mirror who did not have to choose between his blood and his loyalty, between the name he wore and the name that had been taken from him. In the darkness of the corridor, he paused, hand on cold stone, as another thought slid, unwelcome and electric, into his mind. If the mirror had shown him a life where Malfoys and Potters stood together, laughing, unafraid, then somewhere in this castle, in this war, in this carefully managed story, there had to be a reason that vision felt less like fantasy and more like a memory he had not yet been allowed to claim. And Harry was no longer certain that Dumbledore meant for him to find it. The mirror had offered him a life. The stone offered something colder, a calculation, a test of what he was willing to do now that he knew the story he'd been given might be a replica of the truth, polished and placed before him by hands he did not trust. So when talk of the Philosopher's Stone began to coil through the corridors, Harry did not look first to the Gryffindor table or to Hagrid's hut. He looked down the Slytherin table to Draco's pale, intent face, to Blaze's narrowed eyes, to Pansy's quick, assessing glance. Power had entered the castle. That meant a plan. This is important. Suspicion in this version of events never settled on Snape as a villainous silhouette at the edge of the pitch. Snape was the shadow in their own house, the professor who watched Harry Malfoy with a gaze that knew too much about James Potter's son and Lucius Malfoy's ward. When Quirrell stammered and sweated and flinched at sudden sounds, Slytherins did not see cowardice. They saw camouflage, ambition wrapped in trembling hands. Not Dumbledore, who had smiled vaguely through the year, seemed dangerous to them. Not Hagrid, who had ferried Harry from platform to castle with clumsy, earnest pride. It was Quirrell who lingered too long near forbidden doors, whose scent of foreign grave dust and burned spices clung to him like a second cloak, a man who had gone abroad and come back thinner, hungrier, hollowed by some invisible charm. Their investigation began the way all Slytherin plans did, in whispers, in the dungeons, between curfew and dawn. Blaze provided diversions, drifting into conversations with prefects at just the right moment. Pansy kept lists of who was where, when, and with whom, building alibis as carefully as other first years built homework scrolls. Harry and Draco moved through the castle like twin green shadows, from the library's restricted section to the third-floor corridor, testing locked doors, mapping patrols, learning which staircases lied. Snape's presence was a constant pressure. He appeared at the ends of corridors with no sound, robes billowing like spilled ink. He took points, gave detentions, and in every narrowed glance there was a question. How far will you go, Potter Malfoy? Will you be brave? Or will you be clever? The grave was empty where trust should have been. Without Ron's impulsive loyalty or Hermione's relentless logic, every step toward the trapdoor became an argument whispered between brothers. Harry's instinct to move, to act, to throw himself forward because something was wrong. Draco's instinct to wait, to calculate, to remember that Lucius had taught them that surviving was its own kind of victory. Whose voice would he follow when the floor literally dropped away beneath them? In the end, they went together. Devil's snare tightened around their ankles, Draco's cool analysis and Harry's sudden flare of wandless heat forced it back. Enchanted keys sliced the air. Draco directed. Harry leapt. The chessboard was abandoned, its black and white armies irrelevant to boys, raised in a house where every piece was already green. But at the final door, Quirrell waited, and Voldemort was there, thin as smoke, sharp as a blade. Here the pattern broke. Draco faltered, breath catching at the sight of the Dark Lord his father revered, the figure whose mark haunted the Manor's drawing room. Harry stepped forward. The revelation that Voldemort was alive did not astonish him. It confirmed a fear he had never named. What shocked him was the way the Dark Lord spoke his name, not as Malfoy, but as Potter, with a hatred that predated any adoption papers. When Quirrell lunged and Harry's skin burned him, when that ancient sacrificial magic flared and Voldemort recoiled, the victory tasted wrong. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere, somehow, her work was still inside him. The stone was saved. Quirrell fell. Voldemort fled like a torn shadow. Yet as Harry lay in the hospital wing, listening to Dumbledore's carefully measured explanations, one question would not loosen its grip. If the touch of the Dark Lord rejected him, if the protection in his very blood had chosen a side long before the Malfoys ever took him in, then who had he truly been serving all this time? The family that raised him, or the destiny that had marked him? And which betrayal would matter more when both sides finally demanded he choose? The grave of first year lay behind him. The scars did not. They came home with Harry to Malfoy Manor, invisible and yet present in every glance Lucius cast, in every question Narcissa did not quite dare to ask. Lucius had received Dumbledore's owl before the train arrived. A carefully measured account of a thwarted theft, a warning that his ward had been unusually close to school business. Dumbledore omitted the stone, omitted Quirrell's true allegiance, but Lucius heard what was not written. This is important. The boy who lived had brushed against something the headmaster wished to bury. Pride flared first, sharp and possessive. His son at the center of the board. Then alarm, colder, because Lucius Malfoy did not believe in coincidences where ancient magic and Albus Dumbledore were concerned. Summer at the manor became a correction, a tightening of discipline disguised as reward. Harry's timetable filled before he could protest, a retired dueling champion 3 mornings a week, drilling him until his wand arm shook, an etiquette tutor in the afternoons, reshaping posture and tone until every word felt like a rehearsed charm, evenings devoted to family obligations, which meant standing at Lucius's side as a kind of living emblem, while carefully selected pure-blood families paid their calls. They praised his composure. They measured his scar. They watched the way Lucius watched him. The rhythm of the house shifted after nightfall. Doors that had once stood open now closed with soft final clicks. Strangers arrived by flew with their hoods up and their voices low, and Harry was sent to his room with a book and a reminder that true power did not eavesdrop like a servant. Yet through stone and silence, he still felt it. The pulse of old alliances, the murmur of names that the ministry pretended were only a dark chapter in a finished story. Narcissa moved in the spaces between. She fussed over the lingering bruises he had brought back from the stone chamber without ever naming the place. Her cool hands traced the outline of where Quirrell's grip had burned, and her questions were knives wrapped in velvet. What had Dumbledore said? Where had he stood? How close had he been when the danger broke? Not Dumbledore, who had written his letter in bland, bloodless phrases. Narcissa wanted the raw truth, the part that might reveal what her husband was not telling her. Sometimes, when she thought Harry was not looking, she watched Lucius with a kind of quiet terror, as if she could already see the plan unfolding and knew it led toward a grave that would not stay empty. The mark entered Harry's life by accident. A summer storm, a flash of greenish light through the study windows, Lucius shrugging off his outer robe too quickly as he reached for a decanter. For a heartbeat, the sleeve fell back. The serpent and skull writhed, not with motion but with memory, a brand sunk deep into pale skin. The grave was empty, the ministry had said of the Dark Lord's power, the war finished, its magic buried. Yet the mark was still there, still dark, still waiting. Harry did not speak, Lucius did not notice. But something in the boy who bore another man's curse recognized kinship in that stain. As August thinned and Hogwarts letters arrived again, the manor felt less like a home and more like a coiled serpent around his life. Private tutors, secret meetings, the mark's silent testimony, each was a strand tightening around his choices. He would return to the castle not only as Draco Malfoy's brother and Lucius's heir, but as a child who had seen too much and understood too little. And beneath every polished corridor and practiced smile, one question waited like a whisper in Parseltongue. If the Dark Lord was truly gone, why did his shadow still live in the skin of the man who called Harry son? The shadow followed him back to Hogwarts. It wore Lucius Malfoy's face. It smiled when the world whispered that the Dark Lord was gone, and it tightened its grip when the castle began to whisper of another heir. Lucius had a plan, a careful, gleaming, poisonous plan. The diary slid into Ginny Weasley's cauldron as in the original story, a cursed replica of a boy's soul buried among second-hand books and ink-stained quills. But this time, Lucius did not intend only chaos. He intended choreography. Each petrified Muggle born would be another line in his argument that blood mattered, that old magic preferred old families, and that his adopted son, Harry Malfoy, standing untouched in Slytherin Green, was living proof. This is important. The attacks began like a rumour and hardened into a pattern. Mrs. Norris, rigid as stone. Colin Creevey, camera frozen at his eye. Then Justin Finch-Fletchley. Each time, Slytherin House hummed with a low, secretive satisfaction, like a snake pleased with the chill of its own scales. They spoke in the language Lucius had taught their fathers, purity, destiny, the grave inevitability of old blood reclaiming power. Harry listened, and something inside him recoiled. He remembered a troll in the girls' bathroom, the reek of it, the way Hermione's small body had looked so breakable beneath the club. He remembered choosing, with Draco at his side, to run toward danger instead of away. Now his housemates leaned back in their chairs and speculated which Muggle-born would fall next, and he felt as though the walls themselves were contracting. The chamber was a myth, they said. The victims were a sign, but he had seen fear on faces that looked nothing like enemies. The story his father told him about blood and worth did not fit the evidence of his own eyes. Then the snake spoke, and Harry answered. In the dueling club, in the sudden hush after the conjured serpent hit the floor, he hissed without thinking. Parseltongue slid from his tongue like inherited memory. The grave was empty where certainty should have been. Not Dumbledore, who had watched the boy who lived become a Malfoy, knew how deep that echo would cut. Not Hagrid, who had once carried a different Harry from a ruined house, understood why the room now stared as if the past had stepped into the present. Rumour moved faster than any charm. A Malfoy, a snake speaker, attacks in the walls, Muggle-borns falling like chess pieces. Harry became both suspect and symbol, the living centerpiece of Lucius's ideology and its most frightened witness. He felt a strange, ancestral pull toward the voice in the pipes and an equally powerful revulsion at what that voice seemed to want. Draco's first reaction was pride. Of course his brother might be Slytherin's heir. Of course, the castle finally recognized what Lucius had always said they were. But pride curdled when Draco saw Harry's hands shaking after visiting the hospital wing. When he watched his brother stand for too long at Colin's bed, eyes fixed, jaw tight. The plan said this was victory. Harry looked as though it were a funeral. Something hairline cracked in Draco then. If Harry, who shared his name and his house and his father, could look at a petrified muggle born and see horror instead of proof, what did that say about the magic they had been raised to worship? The diary waited, patient in Ginny's ink-stained fingers. Inside it, Tom Riddle's replica of boyhood charm and wounded brilliance sharpened itself, ready for the moment Harry Malfoy would finally open its pages. When that happened, he would not simply meet a fragment of Voldemort. He would meet the mirror of who he might have become if he had stepped fully into Lucius's story. And in the depths of the castle, something older than families listened to the brothers' footsteps and decided which of them it would answer when the chamber finally opened. The castle answered Harry first. The sink slid aside with a grinding of stone and a breath of air that smelled like something kept too long in a sealed grave. Draco stared into the dark throat of the passage, jaw tight, wand white-knuckled in his hand. Harry did not look at him. He looked down, into the place that had been waiting since Slytherin walked these halls, listening for the voice that would open it. He spoke in Parseltongue. The word was a hiss and a key and a confession. The pipe yawned wider. This is important. Harry did not descend because he was brave in the Gryffindor sense, because he wanted glory, or even because Ginny Weasley lay dying on cold stone far below. He went because the whispers in Slytherin had begun to sound like prophecy. Because every suspicious glance, every muttered "of course it's a Malfoy," had started to feel like a verdict. He went to disprove a story that had already been written about him. Draco offered to come. Of course he did. A Malfoy did not let his brother vanish into a cursed shaft alone. But in the end, Harry shook his head, the decision landing between them like a broken charm. If he came back, he needed it to be because of who he was, not because of the name they shared. The descent was a bruising slide through cold, damp stone, through the bowels of a school that had never been neutral. He landed hard, ribs aching, palms scraped, the echo of his fall swallowed by a tunnel that smelled of rot and old magic. Water dripped. Something skittered away at the edge of his light. At the chamber doors, the serpents carved in greenish stone seemed to lean toward him. Listening, he spoke again in that other tongue. The doors unfurled. Tom Riddle was waiting like an answer someone had prepared years in advance. Not a stranger, not a ghost. A boy with Harry's age and none of his uncertainty, standing beside Ginny's crumpled body and the little black diary that had started as a curiosity in Harry's school bag. "Harry Malfoy," Tom said, tasting the name. "Or should I say Potter? I knew you would come." The grave was empty. Tom did not mean Godric's Hollow, he meant the hollow where Harry's certainty about himself should have been. He circled, eyes bright, voice soft. He spoke of bloodlines and legacies, of Slytherin's monster and the Malfoy plan to keep magic pure. He spoke in phrases Harry had half heard at Lucius's gatherings, the ones whispered when they thought the boys asleep. Not Dumbledore, who had watched Harry across the Great Hall with that measuring gaze. Not Hagrid, who had grunted a wary greeting at King's Cross. Not Sirius, who had no place in this version of the story at all. Tom knew more about the fault lines in Harry's identity than any of them. "Imagine it," Tom murmured. "The Malfoy heir who speaks to serpents. The boy who unites Slytherin's true legacy with the oldest pure-blood name. We reshape the world. No more hiding, no more replicas of power in the ministry, only the real thing." Harry listened. To the temptation, to the familiarity, to the way Tom's offer sounded like Lucius without the hesitation, without Narcissa's quiet, frightened love. Then Fawkes arrived. The phoenix's cry shattered the stale air, a pattern interrupt of living color, an impossible hope in a chamber built for fear. The sorting hat dropped at Harry's feet like a discarded relic. In that instant, he understood that the castle itself had taken a side, that the magic of Hogwarts did not belong to any one house or any one name. The basilisk came, vast and terrible, scales scraping stone, eyes lethal. Harry did not win because he was fearless. He was not. His hands shook. His voice cracked. He won because he chose, again and again, in those frantic minutes, to move toward danger for someone else's sake. Because he trusted a phoenix over a diary, loyalty over legacy. When the fang pierced the diary, Tom's scream was the sound of a future collapsing. Ink bled like poisoned blood. Ginny gasped, color returning to her face as the charm binding her to the book broke. Harry left the chamber with her weight awkward and alive in his arms, Fawkes guiding them upward, the monster of Slytherin dead behind them. The victory would never be fully told. Dumbledore would know pieces, Ginny would remember fragments, Lucius would suspect. But in Slytherin, something subtle and irreversible shifted. Their golden Malfoy had gone into Salazar's grave and come back with a Weasley, not a trophy. A Malfoy who chose the wrong side of history, or the right one. And the castle which had listened so long began quietly to listen to him. The castle had begun to listen to him. Outside its walls, something older and more dangerous was already listening too. In Azkaban, Sirius Black did the arithmetic of betrayal over and over until only one conclusion remained. Harry Potter was alive. Harry Potter was in green and silver. And Harry Potter was sleeping under the same roof as Lucius Malfoy. This is important. In canon, Sirius escapes to protect a boy raised by Muggles. Here, he escapes to tear his godson out of a pure blood shrine. The grave was empty in his mind, even if he did not know the literal truth of Godric's Hollow. What mattered was that the story everyone told about that night was wrong. Not Dumbledore, who had left Harry with the Dursleys in another life. Not Hagrid, who had carried a crying infant through the smoke. Not Sirius, who had offered his motorbike and his name. None of them had accounted for a future in which the boy who lived answered to Malfoy. So when Sirius slipped through the bars as Padfoot and into the sea, his plan was not vague vengeance. It was specific. It was a straight line drawn from the Dementor's chill to the gates of Malfoy Manor. He pictured Lucius's peacocks going silent, the grave stillness of the yew trees broken by a black dog crossing the lawn. He pictured Harry's room, its walls a charm-laced replica of Draco's, its wardrobe full of green. The Ministry panicked for reasons they could never print. A madman hunting a schoolboy made a tidy headline. A madman hunting the Malfoy heir was a political catastrophe. Cornelius Fudge stood in Lucius's shadow in more ways than one. He could not afford open war with the family that bankrolled half his confidence. So publicly, Sirius was after Harry Potter, dangerous and deranged. Privately, auras were briefed on Malfoy Manor's wards, and an extra ring of protection slid into place around Slytherin House. Harry heard the whispers before he heard the truth. A mass murderer wanted him. The boy who bore the Dark Lord's scar should have been terrified. But his fear was filtered through years of Malfoy dinners, of Lucius's cold voice describing Sirius as a blood traitor who spat on his own name, a mad dog who turned on his pure blood masters. How do you fear a man you have been taught to despise rather than to grieve? At Hogwarts, the cat-and-mouse game twisted. The fat lady's slashed portrait was a Gryffindor disaster in canon. Here, Sirius lingered in the dungeons instead, a shadow in the torchlight, a dog's growl echoing in stone corridors near the Slytherin common room. Fudge insisted the Dementors ring the whole school, but the patrols near the lake often drifted closer to the entrance to the dungeons than to the Gryffindor Tower. The message beneath the official story was clear: protect the Malfoy boy. In the Shrieking Shack, the confrontation was no longer only about Pettigrew. It became a custody hearing conducted with wands drawn. Sirius, gaunt and shaking, did not merely shout that he was innocent. He shouted that Harry was his, by blood, by promise, by a life James had asked him to share. Lucius, he snarled, had no right to the child he had twisted into a weapon. Harry's reply was not simple. He stood between godfather and adoptive father with the grave knowledge of 13 years in Malfoy Manor pressing on his spine. Lucius had given him a name, a bed, a brother. He had also given him lies. Sirius offered the opposite, a ruined life, a hunted existence, but a truth that rang like broken glass. This is important. In another story, Harry says yes at once to the godfather's offer of escape. Here he hesitated. He saw Draco's face. He saw Narcissa's hand on his shoulder at every Quidditch match. He saw Lucius, pale and furious, when the Ministry suggested moving Harry to a safer house. The decision was almost made for him. The Ministry could not allow the Malfoy prize to vanish with a fugitive. Dumbledore could not risk Harry disappearing into the wild with a man whose sanity had been gnawed by Dementors. Not Dumbledore, who had already lost too many children to war. So paperwork, politics, and petrified fear closed around them like another set of bars. In the end, Sirius's offer of a different life dissolved in the chaos of the shack and the moon and the rat's escape. Harry watched his godfather dragged away by Dementors on the shore, the promise of a home beyond the manor torn from him. He went back to Hogwarts in green and silver. Back to Draco's side. Back to a house that now knew the Ministry guarded its corridors for his sake. The godfather's shadow had passed through his life and failed to carry him away. For now. Because somewhere between Malfoy Manor's polished floors and Sirius's cell, Harry had learned a new, dangerous thing. He could be wanted by more than one world. And worlds that want you do not stop pulling. Worlds that pull do not always pull toward the light. Sometimes they drag you toward a shore lined with hooded figures and breath like ice. The Dementors come to Hogwarts as in the canon story, but their first meeting with Harry Malfoy is not on the lake. It is in a train compartment, with Draco at his side and Slytherin green on his chest when the lamps shudder and go out. The door slides open, the air rots, and Harry hears the scream. Not just Lily's scream from Godric's Hollow, high and desperate and ending in green. Another sound layered beneath it, like two memories trying to occupy the same grave. A baby's laugh. A man's voice calling prongs, "You're going to get us killed." And then a rush of warmth that does not belong to Malfoy Manor at all. This is important. Because Harry has never been in that house, never seen that man. Yet his bones know the cadence of the laughter the way they know his own name. On the Quidditch pitch, it is worse. The Dementors swarm the stadium, drawn to the boy whose life is a knot of broken protections and half-told truths. The world tilts. He falls. And as he plummets, he does not see Draco's white face or Lucius's cold mask. He sees a cottage that is not a replica, firelight on real walls, James Potter tossing a toddler into the air, Lily bending over a birthday cake with wax dripping on her fingers. A life that never happened, yet feels more solid than every polished corridor of Malfoy Manor. The grave was empty. The memories are not. Afterward, it is Snape who intervenes. Not Dumbledore, who had already begun to calculate what a Malfoy-raised saviour might mean for his plan. Not Hagrid, who had once carried a different Harry from a different wreckage. Snape corners the boy in a cold classroom and speaks of house honour, of Slytherin dignity, of the need to defend his mind and magic against creatures that feast on weakness. He offers to teach him the Patronus charm. Lily was a charms prodigy, and every time Harry raises his wand and tries to force light from despair, something in Snape's voice cracks. He drills the incantation into Harry with a cruelty that is almost tenderness. Expecto Patronum. Again, each shimmer of silver is praise for Slytherin discipline on the surface, and beneath that, a quiet, terrified acknowledgement that Dumbledore is watching, that every step toward a corporeal Patronus is a step toward Harry becoming a weapon the headmaster could wield. When the stag finally bursts from his wand, it is not triumphant. It is wrong. Alien, a creature from another boy's childhood. Harry stares at it, at the antlers and the sure-footed grace, and feels grief for a father he was never permitted to mourn, because officially that man is nothing to him but a name in a file. Yet the magic does not lie. The truth stands before him in silver. Draco watches from the doorway, wand slack at his side. He has tried. He has whispered the words until his throat burned. Nothing. To see his brother call forth a guardian of such blinding purity fills him with awe that tastes like envy, and envy that tastes like fear. What blood sings in Harry's veins that will not answer in his? The answer comes on the night the Dementors mass at the Black Lake. The sky is a lid of iron. The water is ink. Cloaked figures glide toward the shore where students huddle. And for a moment Harry hesitates, Slytherin crest heavy on his chest, Malfoy expectations coiled around his spine. Then he steps forward. Silver erupts. The stag charges across the black surface as if the lake were glass, antlers lowered, scattering Dementors like ash in a storm wind. On the shore, a boy in green watches his own Patronus and understands, with a clarity that hurts, that the brightest thing inside him does not belong to the house that claimed him. It belongs to a family his house despises. And as the last Dementor flees, Harry feels another pull, older and deeper than any Malfoy oath, tugging him toward a truth no one at Hogwarts is ready to see. The Patronus fades. The cold recedes, and almost before Harry can name that older pull inside him, Hogwarts itself conspires to show him another kind of world. The foreign schools arrive like omens. First, the Beauxbatons carriage, a pale blue leviathan descending from the clouds, its windows aglow with soft gold. Then the Durmstrang ship, heaving up from the depths of the lake like a grave breaking open, dripping black water and older, rougher magic. For years, Harry has believed the story that houses are the only borders that matter. Green against red, silver against gold. But as students pour out in unfamiliar robes and unfamiliar languages, that story begins to look small, provincial, almost like a replica of a much larger war. This is important. The Yule Ball is meant to be a celebration, an elegant pause in a year already darkened by dragons and whispers of the graveyard. For Harry Malfoy, it is also a test. Narcissa supervises his dress robes herself, smoothing emerald silk over his shoulders, adjusting the cut of the cuffs until he looks every inch the Malfoy heir, immaculate, cold, expensive. His partner is a carefully chosen, pure-blood girl from an old family, all pearls and pale perfume, whose parents dine with Lucius and discuss ministry votes as if they are chess moves. He dances as he has been taught to dance. Perfect posture, perfect turns, the plan of each step drilled into him like etiquette and blood purity. Yet his eyes are not on the girl in his arms. They are on the fractures in the pattern. Hermione Granger descends the staircase on Victor Kroom's arm, not as the frizzy-haired nuisance Draco mocks in the corridors, but as something that does not fit any Malfoy category, a muggle-born witch whose brilliance has drawn the world's most famous seeker away from his own school, his own alliances. Nearby, a Beauxbaton boy with ink-dark hair is laughing with a Ravenclaw girl whose father works with muggles. A Durmstrang witch shares punch with a Hufflepuff whose family name would earn sneers in any pure-blood drawing room. Not Dumbledore, who had arranged the tournament with a twinkle and a warning, could have designed a more precise assault on Malfoy certainty. The pattern interrupt finds Harry near the edge of the dance floor, where the music softens into a foreign waltz and the candles drift lower, painting the hall in blue and silver light. A Beauxbaton student, tall, dark-eyed, with an accent that rounds his consonants, nods toward Draco and the Slytherin cluster. "Your brother," he says quietly. He laughs at them, but he watches. You do the same. Harry stiffens. They are breaking rules. Whose rules? The boy asks. At my school, we care if a witch is powerful, if her magic is alive, if her work is beautiful. Blood is just a story families tell to feel important. The words land like a charm gone wrong, rearranging the room. For a moment, Harry sees it as this stranger sees it, not houses, not bloodlines. Just people crossing invisible lines that only exist because someone once declared them sacred. Across the floor, Draco sneers at Hermione and Krum, voice low and cutting. But his gaze returns to them again and again, to the impossible sight of a muggle-born witch in foreign silk, laughing without fear. He feels Harry's attention drifting, feels it like a physical betrayal, and his jaw tightens around words he does not yet know how to speak. The music swells, candles spin slowly overhead like distant stars. For one night and a foreign waltzes and borrowed light, Harry can imagine a self that is not confined to Malfoy pride or Potter legend. A self that is simply his. The grave was empty, the roles he has been handed might be empty too. Then the clock strikes midnight. The band shifts to a safer tune. Couples retreat to their houses. Slytherins reassemble like a closing fist. The vision recedes, leaving only an after-image and a question he cannot yet voice. Which story is the truth, and who will let him choose it? The answer does not arrive at midnight. It arrives in blue-white fire. The Great Hall is already humming with that peculiar, brittle excitement that comes when adults pretend danger is a game. The goblet of fire spits out names like sentences: Victor Krum, Fleur Delacour, Cedric Diggory. Each parchment burns, each house cheers or murmurs, and the story seems ready to proceed along familiar, comfortable rails. Then the flames surge again. The grave was empty, destiny hates a vacuum. A fourth scrap of parchment twists up through the smoke, charred at the edges as if reluctant to exist. Dumbledore catches it, eyes narrowing, voice steady in a way that costs him effort. Harry Malfoy. The hall inhales as one. The Malfoy name, usually a hissed aside or a careful flattery, echoes from stone and ceiling, amplified, inescapable. It does not sound like Lucius intended, not as a pure blood brand, not as a quiet promise of influence, but as a summons, a challenge, a crack in the plan. At the Slytherin table, silver and green freeze. Draco's hand tightens on the edge of the bench. Some faces turn toward Harry with sudden, almost hungry pride. Slytherin has a champion. Others narrow in calculation, seeing not glory but scrutiny, the ministry and foreign schools staring straight into their house. This is important. Prestige and peril arrive in the same breath, widening the hairline fractures already running through Harry's place among them. Far away, in a manor lined with portraits that pretend not to listen, an owl lands on Lucius Malfoy's desk. The seal is Hogwarts. The words are simple. The implications are not. He reads that his heir, because that is how he has trained himself to think of Harry now. Weapon and legacy intertwined, has been selected as a fourth champion. Not Dumbledore, who had smiled so politely at the World Cup, could be this careless, Lucius thinks, or this precise. He sends owls that are all ice and legal threat. He sends howlers that burn the air in the Great Hall with a father's fury and a strategist's suspicion, accusing Dumbledore of placing his son in mortal danger while quietly wondering whether prophecy itself has reached through ancient magic to tear up his careful script. Dumbledore listens to the echo of Lucius's rage and hears, beneath it, something older. He did not put Harry's name in the goblet. He knows the binding nature of that charm, knows how the flames reject fraud. Yet the pattern is unmistakable. The boy who should have died, the boy who should have worn red and gold, is dragged again toward the center of the coming war. House colors irrelevant. Fate, or something like it, has chosen proximity to Voldemort over any human plan. Not Hagrid, who had once carried a different Harry from a ruined cottage, could mistake the look in Dumbledore's eyes now. The path is set. The maze will still grow, hedges high and whispering. The portkey will still be waiting, disguised as a trophy. And at the end of that graveyard corridor of yew and bone, Voldemort will rise again. Only this time, when the Dark Lord looks down, it will not be at a Gryffindor interloper. It will be at a Malfoy son. Standing at his feet, every family lies suddenly, terrifyingly alive. The portkey does not feel like victory. It feels like a hook behind the navel, a yank through darkness, a silent scream stretched across a void. One heartbeat Harry Malfoy is reaching for the cup, for the story of glory he has been promised. The next, he is on his knees in a graveyard, palms skidding on damp earth, the air thick with the smell of old stone and something metallic and waiting. The grave was empty. This is important. Not the carved grave before him, which bears the name of Tom Riddle Sr. and the dates of a Muggle life cut short. The grave inside Harry, the place where certainty used to lie, is what truly stands open. Around him, black-robed figures apparate into being, circling like closing iron bars. Masks tilt, wands rise, and before they see the scar on his forehead, they see the crest on his robes, Silver Serpent Malfoy sigil. Stitched over his heart, a murmur moves through them, Lucius's boy. the Dark Lord's favoured household. This is the heir they were told was being shaped, the replica of pure blood ideals raised under a roof of marble and whispered curses. Harry hears one word hissed with a kind of reverence that makes his stomach turn. Malfoy, then the ritual begins. Bone of the father unknowingly given, flesh of the servant, willingly sacrificed, blood of the enemy forcibly taken. The magic is older than any ministry decree, older than the manor's polished halls, older even than the charm Lily once crafted in another life to keep her son alive. The cauldron hisses, steam rising like spectral fingers. When the thing that was Voldemort steps forth, pale and whole and terrible, the graveyard itself seems to flinch. He studies Harry with a serpent's patience, and then he smiles. Not at the scar, at the crest. Lucius, Voldemort breathes, voice soft as grave dust. You have done well. You have given me what fate tried to steal. The blood of my enemy, purified, disciplined, my perfect creation. Harry's horror is not a single blow. It is a series of quiet, surgical cuts. He hears his childhood reframed as a plan, every lesson at Malfoy Manor revealed as a step in a design he never consented to. The etiquette drills, the contempt for Muggle-borns, the way Lucius had corrected his wand grip with a pressure that was almost proud. He knew he was being shaped, he never knew for whom. His identity fractures along invisible seams. Is he Potter, marked by a curse? Is he Malfoy, praised by a monster? In this graveyard, both names feel like lies and both feel like chains. The duel is inevitable. Voldemort wants a demonstration, a spectacle for the gathered faithful. Wands rise, spells collide. When green meets red, the world narrows to a single golden thread of magic, and priori incantatem binds them as surely as prophecy ever did. Shadows pour from Voldemort's wand, a man with untidy hair, a woman with fierce eyes. James and Lily emerge, not as replicas, not as charms, but as echoes caught in the wand's memory. They look at the boy in Slytherin robes, at the serpent emblem on his chest, and there is a flicker of recognition that is not quite surprise and not quite grief. It is something worse. It is understanding. They do not ask why he wears those colors. They do not ask whose house raised him. They simply tell him to hold on, to run when the connection breaks, to live. Not Dumbledore, who had always spoken in riddles. Not Hagrid, who had brought him into the world of magic. Not Sirius, who had raged against the Malfoy name. Only these two, who see all of him at once. He escapes in a rush of light and screams and portkey drag, the cup wrenching him back to Hogwarts. But he does not arrive as the boy who lived. He arrives as something far more dangerous. The boy Voldemort now sees as both weapon and weakness. Because the Dark Lord believes he owns Harry's making. Because the Death Eaters saw the crest before the scar. Because somewhere in the castle, the Malfoy family is standing on the wrong side of a war that has just been reborn. And Harry, shaking on the grass, understands a new and terrible truth. The next move in this plan will not be made on a battlefield. It will be made at his own dining table. The grave was empty, but the sky above Malfoy Manor was not. It burned with a skull of emerald fire, the serpent tongue of the Dark Mark hanging directly over Harry's bedroom like a verdict. This is important. The war no longer lived in whispers and rumors. It had an address, a roof, a dining room. Voldemort came openly now, sometimes with a crack like a bone breaking, sometimes with a soft displacement of air that felt worse. The manor's white corridors, once a museum of pureblood pride, became a procession route for cloaked figures. Strategy was discussed in the drawing room beneath ancestral portraits. Screams bled under the same door. The polished floors reflected both crystal decanters and the spatter of failed occlumency, as if the house itself could no longer tell the difference between elegance and atrocity. At the center of this, there was a table, long, perfect, set with silver that caught the candlelight and threw it back like tiny knives. Lucius at one end, posture a study in controlled terror. Narcissa opposite, every gesture measured, every word a charm cast without a wand. Draco and Harry along the side, two boys pretending to eat while the most feared wizard alive sat where a godfather should have sat, praising their breeding as though he had not orphaned one of them. Voldemort liked to speak of children, of potential. He would let his red gaze linger on Harry's face, on Draco's, musing about the future of Slytherin's line, about loyalty raised rather than bought. He admired Harry's composure, his careful courtesy. He called it proof that the Malfoys had done well with the boy fate had delivered to their door. Not Dumbledore, who had once imagined Harry safe in a cottage grave. Not Hagrid, who had carried a different version of this child from ruins. Not Sirius, who had planned to raise his godson free. None of them sat here to contradict the story. Narcissa did what she could in the spaces between breaths. She diverted. When Voldemort asked about Harry's dueling, she praised his Latin instead, turning battle into scholarship. When Lucius offered Draco for some new task, she reminded the Dark Lord of delicate bloodlines, of the importance of heirs remaining alive. Her lies were soft, domestic things, wrapped in concern and etiquette. But every deflection was an act of treason. She knew it. Harry knew it. Draco, watching her knuckles whiten around her wineglass, began to understand that rebellion could look like a mother changing the subject. Outside the manor, another table waited. Dumbledore in his tower, the Order in shadowed rooms, speaking of the Malfoy heir with cautious hope. They believed Harry might be turned, that the boy in green and silver could yet be reclaimed, groomed instead as their own covert weapon. Inside the manor, Lucius and Voldemort spoke in almost identical terms, of moulding, of guiding, of a future lieutenant who already moved comfortably among serpents. Both sides mistook him for a replica of their expectations, a piece on a board they believed they alone arranged. Harry's truth was uglier and simpler. At Hogwarts, he walked corridors where portraits whispered of courage and choice. At home, he walked corridors where the same word, choice, had been quietly removed from the language. Every doorway now opened onto the war, the library stacked with cursed artifacts, the salon repurposed for silent meetings, the once-forbidden cellar humming with restrained magic that felt like a grave waiting to be filled. The pattern could not hold. One night, listening to distant screams dissolve into brittle laughter, Harry understood that neutrality was a story he had outgrown. He would betray his family, or he would betray himself. The manor, patient and echoing, seemed to lean in around him, as if the very walls were waiting to hear which name he would carve into the dark. The manor was listening. So was someone else. In the shadows between house and war, there was a man who had already carved his name into the dark and regretted the spelling. Severus Snape watched Harry Malfoy with the wary concentration of a duelist studying his own reflection in a tarnished mirror. This is important. because Snape, more than anyone, understood what it meant to stand with one foot in Voldemort's grave and the other on Dumbledore's crumbling pedestal, pretending the ground between them was solid. He alone saw the pattern repeating, a boy pledged by blood and expectation to the Dark Lord's circle, yet bound by older magics and older debts to something else. Not Dumbledore, who had convinced himself that proximity to the Malfoys was part of a necessary plan. Not Hagrid, who had grumbled about that snake's nest but never walked its corridors. Not Sirius, who had raged at the idea of Harry in green and silver but never once imagined him kneeling on cold marble before Voldemort, Lucius at his shoulder. In the dungeons, the story narrowed. Stone, candlelight, the smell of potion fumes and fear. Snape's private lessons began as an order from the headmaster and a command from the Dark Lord. Teach the boy occlumency, shield his mind, make him useful. They became something else. Harry stood rigid while Snape's voice cut at him, while memories were dragged to the surface, while the graveyard of his loyalties was laid bare. Occlumency was a charm of negation, of walls and locked doors, but under Snape's guidance it felt like vivisection. Harry looked like James. The line of the jaw, the stubborn lift of the chin. In Malfoy black and silver, the resemblance was a kind of blasphemy. Yet as months passed, Snape began to see something more disturbing than James in the boy's face. He saw himself. The practiced neutrality at Death Eater gatherings. The careful, delayed answers when Dumbledore asked too much. The way Harry's eyes shuttered whenever Lucius praised him in front of Voldemort, as if some part of him refused to be fully alive in that moment. Bitterness was Snape's oldest companion, and now it had new targets. He resented Dumbledore for placing the child in that house, for trusting in a theoretical redemption arc when the manor felt like a grave waiting to be sealed. He resented Lucius for shaping Harry's reflexes, for teaching him that mercy was weakness and obedience was survival. Most of all, he resented himself for the sick twist in his chest whenever Harry returned from an audience with the Dark Lord trembling but breathing. So the care, when it came, was hidden, almost petty in its secrecy. A vial of reinforced calming draught slipped into Harry's hand after a night where Voldemort's Cruciatus had lingered too long, its glass cool and anonymous against his palm. A murmured, "Do not take the left corridor tonight," delivered in passing, that diverted Harry from an aura ambush meant to test the manor's loyalty. A subtle adjustment to a shielding spell during a duel, so that when a curse went astray, it scorched stone instead of bone. Each act was a betrayal of someone, of Voldemort's trust, of Dumbledore's clean, simple narrative, of Snape's own insistence that he did not care. But he did. Because in Harry Malfoy he saw the echo of another boy who should have been protected and was not. The grave was empty, but the debt remained. Lily was a charms prodigy, and Snape knew better than anyone what she had died to defend. Or seemed to die. The truth of that night was still a closed room to him. Yet as he watched Harry balance on the same razor's edge he had once walked, he recognized a terrible possibility. The boy could end Voldemort. Or, if pushed too far into the Malfoy mold, he could become the perfect weapon in the Dark Lord's hand. This is important, because every lesson, every barbed comment, every secretly softened blow was Snape choosing again and again which future he was arming. Redemption or ruin both wore Harry's face, and somewhere beyond the castle, two ghosts who were not ghosts at all were watching the same boy. wondering which name he would answer to when the final command came, Draco had grown up with a simple story. He led, Harry followed. That was the plan. In the echoing corridors of Malfoy Manor, when the war was still a distant, glamorous promise and not a weight on the spine, Draco chose the games and Harry trailed in his wake. Draco picked the brooms, Harry flew the slower one. Draco repeated Lucius's opinions. Harry listened, absorbing pure blood doctrine as if it were gravity. The grave was empty back then, because nothing had yet died that they could name. Hogwarts shattered that quiet orbit. The Triwizard Tournament burned it. Harry stepping into the arena as a Malfoy heir, and emerging as the boy who had faced dragons and merfolk, and a graveyard that should not have existed, rewrote the balance between them. Draco had not seen the green flash in that graveyard, but he had seen the mark on Harry's arm afterward, the two quiet eyes, the way Snape's gaze lingered on his brother as if measuring a weapon. Envy came like frost. Slow, relentless, Harry's Patronus, a blazing stag that filled the corridor outside the dungeons with silver light, made Draco's own faltering effort look like a pale replica of courage. Dumbledore's hand on Harry's shoulder at the welcoming feast, the way the headmaster's eyes sharpened whenever Harry spoke, twisted like a charm gone wrong in Draco's chest. Not Dumbledore, who had once merely tolerated Malfoys as necessary aristocratic inconveniences. Now he watched Harry as if the boy contained a secret map. This is important. Because Draco told himself he did not care. He buried the resentment under sarcasm, sharpened it into cruelty. He mocked Harry's limp after a failed occlumency lesson, sneered about Gryffindor admirers he claimed Harry did not deserve, parroted Lucius's contempt for Dumbledore's pet even when the pet in question shared his bedroom wall. And yet, there were nights when the Dark Lord's temper turned, when Harry returned from the drawing room with fingers shaking and shirt torn, that Draco's hands moved without permission. He locked the door. He muttered numbing charms, badly but earnestly. He wrapped bandages around burns that smelled of cold old magic. When Harry disappeared for hours on a Death Eater errand, Draco lied for him, telling Narcissa his brother was studying, telling Snape his brother was sleeping, telling himself this was still loyalty, not treason. He warned Harry in half sentences. A meeting has changed. Father is nervous. Do not sit with your back to the window. He did not say, I am afraid for you. For us. The moral fracture began when he saw Harry punished for hesitating to curse a Muggle-born child brought to the manor as an example. They had been raised to revere this ideology, to believe that purity was safety and power. Yet there was Harry, forced to his knees, wand wrenched from his hand, enduring pain from the very creed that had defined their childhood. If loyalty to family meant loyalty to the man holding the wand, what did that make Draco when his whole body screamed to move? Not Hagrid, who had sworn to protect Harry in another life. Not Sirius, who had died for him in another story. Draco Malfoy, whose world had always been carved into bloodlines and obligations, found himself standing in a doorway, unable to cross the threshold between obedience and defiance. He watched Harry choose, again and again, tiny refusals wrapped in apparent compliance. A mis-aimed curse, a delayed bow, a message smuggled in a book spine. Each one dragged Draco closer to a line he had never imagined questioning. When the final order came, to hurt, to betray, to stand aside, Which brother would he be? The one who followed Harry into open rebellion, or the one who clung to the Malfoy name like a shield, even if it became Harry's grave? Somewhere in the manor, a plan older than either boy was moving, and the moment was coming when Draco would discover whether his love was strong enough to kill the only life he had ever known. The night the plan finally broke climbed in silence. Stone by stone, stair by stair, two Malfoy sons ascended toward the place where so many Hogwarts stories ended in whispers, the Astronomy Tower. The air was thin up here. So was mercy. Draco walked first, because he had been ordered to. The Dark Lord had placed the grave of Dumbledore's life in the trembling hands of a 17-year-old boy, and every step was a countdown. Harry followed at a distance that was not quite safe and not quite defiant, cloak discarded, secrecy abandoned. He would not let his brother walk into that thin, cold air alone. This is important. He had heard enough. Snape's quiet arguments with Narcissa, the half-spoken phrases in the manor corridors, the unguarded moment when Draco stared at his own reflection as if testing whether he was already a replica, already dead. Harry knew the truth long before the cabinet was fixed. Draco had been tasked with killing the headmaster. On the tower, the scene unfolded with the dreadful inevitability of old magic. Dumbledore, wand lowered, body failing, robe stirring in the wind like a frayed standard, turned not toward one boy, but two. Not Dumbledore, who had faced Grindelwald and Voldemort and the slow erosion of his own ideals, would ever have expected that the Dark Lord's chosen assassin would arrive flanked by the boy he had once tried to guide from a distance. The child he had allowed to grow up inside Malfoy Manor. Draco, he said first, because he always began with the most fragile piece on the board. Then, after a heartbeat that felt like a century, Harry, two wands rose. Two hands shook. One name bound them both. Dumbledore did not plead. He did what he had always done. He told a story and hoped that, this time, someone would listen before the ending turned to ash. He spoke of choices, of the strange, stubborn magic that allowed a boy in green and silver to refuse a mark, of a mother who loved her son more than any cause. He spoke of Lily and James as if they were still alive in the room, not because the grave was empty, but because memory itself was a kind of charm. He offered protection. For Draco, a way out that did not end with his body on a drawing room floor. For Harry, a future not written by Lucius's careful hand or Voldemort's cruelty. You are not your name, he told them. You are your choices. Which betrayal would save them? Which loyalty would kill them? Harry's wand did not know where to point. At Dumbledore, to preserve the delicate, invisible plan Snape had hinted at in half-sentences? At Draco's arm, to stop the curse he could feel coiling but not yet forming? He understood, with a clarity that felt like falling, that saving the headmaster might condemn everyone in the manor. And condemning the headmaster might save his brother's soul. Draco's mouth formed the first syllable of the killing curse. Nothing came. His arm locked. His eyes filled. The boy who had been raised to see mercy as weakness discovered that he could not murder the only man who had ever offered him forgiveness before he asked for it. The pattern broke. A door opened. Snape stepped onto the tower. The world narrowed to 3 wands and 1 decision. Snape took in the tableau, Draco frozen, Harry split down the middle, Dumbledore already halfway to the place beyond plans. Their eyes met, Snape and Harry, and in that instant something passed between them that was not hatred, not yet understanding, but an awful recognition. Snape raised his wand. The curse was spoken. Dumbledore fell, robes billowing, life leaving like a final exhale of ancient magic. But this time, as the echo of the spell faded, Harry knew Snape was not only killing a headmaster, he was preserving a design neither Malfoy boy had been trusted to see. The look they shared on that tower was a promise and a warning both, and it would haunt every choice Harry made when the war finally came home to the manor. The tower fell silent. The manor did not. In the days after Dumbledore's death, Malfoy Manor became a pressure chamber. Every corridor held an echo of that tower wind, every polished surface a distorted replica of the moment Draco lowered his wand and Harry did not. Voldemort's fury did not burn, it constricted. It wrapped itself around Lucius's disgrace, around Narcissa's terror, around Draco's shaking hands, and around Harry. This is important. Lucius knelt in the drawing room, sleeve torn, dark mark livid and swollen where Voldemort's fingers had pressed. Narcissa stood behind him, composed in outline, ruined in detail, eyes hollow from nights without sleep. Draco hovered at the edge of the circle as if one step closer would break him. Harry stood where he had been placed, not beside his brother, but half a pace nearer the throne-like chair that was not a throne. The place where Voldemort liked to sit and watch his followers remember how to be afraid. Blame moved like a shadow. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated his own death, not Snape, who had fulfilled the design. The failure must live somewhere, must root in someone's skin. Lucius, who had lost the diary, lost the prophecy, lost his standing. Draco, who had failed to kill. Harry, who had been there and had not prevented the delay, had not dragged his brother over the edge into murder. The trigger came on a rain-heavy evening, when the sky pressed low over the manor and the wards hummed like a warning. A captured Order member brought under cover of thunder, not Hagrid, who had once carried a baby from a ruined cottage. A witch Harry did not know, mud on her boots, blood at the corner of her mouth, eyes bright with something that was not yet despair. Voldemort wanted proof, not words, not oaths, an act. He placed his wand in Harry's hand the way a father might place a quill in a child's grip, a quiet instruction, a simple plan, the Cruciatus, cast cleanly, held until the screaming broke. "You have his blood," Voldemort whispered, red eyes reflecting green firelight. "Show me it is not wasted." Harry looked at the woman on the floor, at her bitten lip, at the way she tried to straighten her spine even as her knees slipped on the polished wood. He looked at Draco, white as the marble hearth, shaking his head in a movement so small it might have been imagined. He looked at Narcissa, whose fingers dug crescents into her own arms. She did not shake her head. She did not nod. She only held his gaze, and in that gaze lay every story of bedtime and bandages and careful, curated truths. What did it mean? To be alive because other people were willing to die? What did it mean to stand in a house built on a grave of choices and pretend the grave was empty? He had loved this place. The echoing halls, the library that smelled of dust and old magic, the gardens where he and Draco had duelled with harmless practice charms while Narcissa watched from the terrace. He had loved Lucius's rare, precise praise. He had loved Draco like a mirror he could argue with. But he had watched the Dark Lord pace these floors. He had seen prisoners dragged through the same doors he had run through as a child. He knew now that staying meant learning to step over blood without flinching. Harry lowered the wand. He said no. The silence that followed was not relief. It was sentence deferred. Voldemort's smile was thin, thoughtful, the smile of a man adjusting a plan rather than abandoning it. "Then we will find another proof," he murmured. "In time." Time, Harry understood, had just run out. The escape did not happen that night. It grew like a cracking glass from that refusal. Snape visited under the pretext of potions. Draco's hands shook as he poured tea. Narcissa listened more than she spoke. Questions hung in the air like dust motes. Could there be another path? Could the design on the tower extend to the manor? In the end, it was not Dumbledore who had fallen who saved him. It was the people the world named Malfoy. Narcissa came to his room near midnight, when the house had settled into the uneasy quiet of watched sleep. Her wandlight was small and steady. Draco was already there, trunk half-packed, pale but resolved. Snape waited in the corridor, silhouette a familiar cut of shadow against deeper dark. "There is a safe house," Snape said, voice low, as if the portraits might be listening. "Headquarters of the Order. They will not welcome you, they will not trust you, but they will keep you from him, for a time." Narcissa's hand cupped Harry's face, thumb brushing the scar that had never quite fit the Malfoy name. "You will go," she said, and there was no question in it. "You will live. That is the only part of this we refuse to surrender." Lily was a charms prodigy, but she had not woven the wards that opened for them that night. These were older protections, black family work repurposed by a different war. The manor's boundaries bent under Snape's layered spells, under Narcissa's blood rite, under Draco's whispered goodbye to the only home he had ever known. They left under cover of a storm. Rain erased footprints on the gravel drive. Wards shivered as they slipped through. 3 dark figures and one boy whose name belonged to 2 worlds. Harry did not look back. He could not bear to see the windows where he had once traced frost patterns, now reflecting only lightning and the faint suggestion of watching eyes. Grimmauld Place received him like a reluctant grave. The door opened not with welcome, but with suspicion. Wands rose, faces hardened. Not Sirius, who had died in another version of this house, but men and women who had fought beside James and Lily, who saw only Malfoy hair and Malfoy posture and a serpent silver and green in the cut of his cloak. "This is Harry," Snape said, the name hanging between them like a contested truth. "A serpent among lions, a boy shaped by one war, delivered into the heart of another that did not yet know what he was. Hope and liability in the same thin frame. Exile, he understood, was not distance. It was being known wrongly, and as the door shut behind him, the manor's echo still in his bones, Harry knew the war had finally claimed his home and left him to decide what kind of weapon he would become next. The burrow felt smaller with him in it. Lower ceilings, thinner walls, softer light that had never reflected off marble, only off copper pans and hand-mended curtains. Harry stood in the Weasleys' kitchen like an intruder in a family photograph, the Malfoy air set down among chipped mugs and the smell of stew. Molly Weasley saw the scar first, then the hair, then the way he held himself, shoulders straight as if braced for inspection. Her wand hand twitched before her arms did. This is important. Her magic knew him as a child to be fed and wrapped in jumpers. Her memory knew the name Malfoy as a poison that had threaded through every grave she had buried friends in. She called him Harry, dear, and then flinched at the sound of her own voice. Ron did not flinch. He exploded. Years of being sneered at in corridors by the boy in green and silver, years of watching Draco's brother lean back in Snape's classroom with bored contempt condensed into a single furious question. "What are you doing here?" The words were louder than the room, louder than the old clock with its spinning hands, louder even than Molly's sharp rebuke. Harry met his eyes and did not look away. He had been trained never to. Ginny's reaction was quieter and, in some ways, crueler. She had built a story in her head, like every child raised on tales of the boy who lived. A noble orphan. A tragic hero. A grave in Godric's Hollow that meant something. The grave was empty. The boy in front of her wore Malfoy posture and Malfoy tailoring, his voice edged with drawling precision when he forgot to blunt it. Her image shattered not with a scream, but with a slow, stunned recalibration. If this was Harry Potter, who had she been admiring all these years? Hermione watched. She catalogued. She interrogated. Not with cruelty, but with a relentless, almost scholarly need for truth. How had he been taught about Muggleborns? What had he seen at the manor when the Dark Lord called? What did Lucius say when the doors were closed and the masks were off? She asked about charms on the drawing room, about the way the mark burned, about who laughed when people screamed. Harry answered in careful, measured sentences, Malfoy arguments slipping out by reflex until he caught them and corrected himself. They all heard it. The trace of superiority on certain words. The instinct to defend pureblood tradition even as he condemned its consequences. Not Dumbledore, who had once believed Slytherin could be redeemed from within. Not Hagrid, who had carried him as a baby in another life that never happened. Not Sirius, who had cursed the Malfoy name in every order meeting. None of them were here to mediate this collision. The Order saw James and Lily's eyes in a boy who quoted Lucius. Harry's alienation was almost a physical thing. He stood in rooms where people had loved his parents and watched them recoil, not from his scar, but from his accent. A drawl on the wrong syllable, a lifted eyebrow when tempers rose, a half-formed sneer when someone suggested a plan that would have been laughed out of the manor's war table. He corrected himself, again and again, until his own voice sounded like a replica he was trying on. And yet, there were fissures in the ice. Hermione found him one night at the kitchen table, long after the house had gone quiet, staring at a Muggle book Arthur had left out. They spoke of blood prejudice as if dissecting a curse, its structure, its transmission, its seductive internal logic. Lily was a charms prodigy, Hermione said at last, almost to herself. She would have torn that ideology apart, given time. Harry's throat closed on the admission that his mother's name had been a forbidden word at home. Ron offered chess like a challenge, not a peace offering. Harry accepted. The first game was a battlefield of old grudges. Harry played with Slytherin patience, Ron with Gryffindor aggression. By the third night, they were arguing about Quidditch formations instead of bloodlines, their insults sharper, but strangely less lethal. Strategy, Harry realized, could be shared even when history could not. Ginny watched him during order meetings. She saw the way he flinched at raised voices, the way his hand drifted, unconsciously, to where a wand holster used to sit at his wrist in the manor. She saw the careful way he stepped around Narcissa's name, as if it were a live curse. Slowly, she began to speak to him not as a legend or an enemy, but as someone whose childhood had been a battlefield with better curtains. He had traded marble for Mothiatan fabric, prestige for suspicion. the illusion of safety for the raw exposure of being known. And yet, in the cramped attic room that creaked with every breath of wind, Harry felt something unfamiliar settling in his chest. Not loyalty bought with fear, not identity carved by another man's mark, the fragile beginning of a self that was his. But the war did not pause to let him become a person. The next Order mission would demand a choice that no Malfoy heir and no Potter son had ever been asked to make. The choice arrives in the dark, as so many of Harry's choices do. Not in a great hall bathed in candlelight, but in a cramped safe house where the walls remember every whispered plan and every name of the dead. The Horcrux hunt cannot wait for him to decide who he is. The team that gathers is not the one any prophecy imagined. Hermione comes first. She arrives with books under her arm and ash in her hair, eyes red from reading and from weeping, and tells Harry in a voice that does not tremble that she is not leaving him. Ron hesitates on the threshold, freckles stark against a face hollowed by war, already flinching from the green and silver stitched into Harry's history. Behind them, in the deeper shadows, stand Blaise Zabini and Draco Malfoy, Slytherins whose presence makes the air itself feel more dangerous. This is important. The grave of the Golden Trio is empty before it is ever dug. In its place stands something stranger, a coalition of children shaped by opposite stories, forced to share one impossible task. Their tactics change, because they must. Harry does not speak of Polyjuice blunders or wild improvisations. He speaks instead of pure blood salons, where secrets are traded like heirlooms, of the forgotten corridors of the Ministry that Lucius once used to bypass security, of Malfoy Manor's hidden passages and the wards Narcissa wove when she still believed protection could be bought with obedience. They will not smash the Ministry's doors. They will walk through them as if they belong there. Not Dumbledore, who had trusted courage to be enough. Not Hagrid, who had kicked down doors rather than slip through keyholes. Harry has learned a different grammar of war. He will use invitations, forged lineage records, and the brittle arrogance of officials who still think the Malfoy name is a charm against consequence. Inside this new alliance, the danger is not only outside. Hermione's conscience burns hot and bright, Blaise's pragmatism is cold as the stone beneath Azkaban. When she argues that some truths must be preserved even at the cost of time, he replies that time is already a grave being dug for Muggle-borns and half-bloods alike. Draco and Ron trade barbs edged with years of schoolyard hatred, each insult a replica of older wounds, Weasley poverty against Malfoy pride, red against silver. Harry stands between them, and this is where his Slytherin childhood becomes something else. He hears Lucius in the back of his mind, speaking of leverage and advantage. He hears Narcissa, voice low and fierce, insisting that family must be kept alive at any cost. He hears, faintly, a different inheritance, James's reckless loyalty, Lily's uncompromising love. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in Harry that meticulous protective magic has become strategy. He chooses, again and again, to bend cunning toward shelter rather than domination. To use blackmail only to extract prisoners from cells. To turn bloodline arrogance into a mask that lets them pass unseen. What does it mean to be a snake in the grass if the grass you hide in is a shield for others? By the time they slip out of the Ministry with one more fragment of soul destroyed and half a dozen lives secretly spared, their unity is still fragile, threaded with suspicion and resentment. But it holds. For now. and Harry knows that whether this unlikely alliance survives will decide whether his defection from the Malfoys is a mere change of house, or the first true break in Voldemort's story. By the time the next summons comes, the fragile alliance has a direction and a target. Malfoy Manor. The name itself is a sentence. A house that was once a sanctuary for a lonely boy in green and silver, now confirmed as a private prison for the Order's most valuable captives. This is important. Voldemort has moved from public terror to private cages. The intelligence is precise in a way that makes everyone uneasy. Ollivander, Griphook, a wounded Auror who never made it back to headquarters. And, whispered last, almost not spoken at all, a Muggle-born girl with wild hair and a talent for fire charms taken to break Harry's resolve and Draco's. The plan that follows is simple in outline and impossible in execution. Break into the Dark Lord's most trusted stronghold. Walk through the grave of Harry's childhood. Leave with everyone alive. Harry does not volunteer. He simply says quietly that he knows the wards. He knows the way the magic hums against the bones of the house. He knew the pattern of the elf rota before he knew the days of the week. He knows which portraits sleep, which doorframes squeak, which staircase will shift if you put your weight on the left side. Every remembered detail is a knife. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. This grave is furnished, carpeted, panelled in dark wood and memory. On the night they go, the sky above Wiltshire is starless, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Harry apparates them to the outer boundary hedge, not to the front gates where he once arrived in a gleaming carriage, but to the narrow servants' path where Dobby used to sneak him treacle tart. Lily was a charms prodigy, and he leans on the silent, intricate work she left in his blood, twisting detection spells just a fraction sideways so that the manor's alarms see replicas where living intruders move. They slip through a postern door that Lucius never bothered to ward properly, because Lucius trusted fear more than locks. Inside, the air smells of polish and cold. Harry leads without speaking, his wand a metronome of light. Past the music room where Narcissa once taught him to waltz. Past the corridor where Draco shoved him into a suit of armor and then laughed until he cried. Every footstep is a betrayal of the boy who thought this place was home. The first confrontation comes in the drawing room. Of course it does. The same high-ceilinged chamber where Christmas trees once scraped the plaster, where Harry and Draco tore open parcels beneath the gaze of ancestral portraits, is now a staging ground for war. Lucius is there, pale and rigid, wand already raised. Narcissa stands half a step behind him, eyes fixed not on Harry's face, but on the scar beneath his fringe, as if seeing it for the first time. Spells ignite the air. Green, red, white, a chandelier explodes, raining crystal like frozen tears. Draco appears from the side doorway, barefoot, as if pulled from sleep, and for a heartbeat all three Malfoys and the boy who was their second son simply stare at one another across the wreckage of their shared life. Then the moment breaks. Lucius shouts. Draco moves, not quite toward his father, not quite toward Harry. Narcissa's curse goes wide, scorching the panelling where Harry's height had been marked in careful pencil lines. Not Dumbledore, who had once warned Harry that love would be his greatest power. Not Hagrid, who had placed a baby on a motorcycle and roared away from another ruined house. Not Sirius, who had dreamed of godfathering a child in a small, shabby flat instead of a manor full of serpents. None of them are here to tell him what to choose. There is only the next spell, the next doorway, the next prisoner. They reach the cellars. Wands cut chains. Shackles fall. Ollivander blinks in the sudden light. The goblin bares his teeth in something that is not quite gratitude. The muggle-born girl grips Harry's wrist so hard it bruises, and he lets her, because the pain anchors him in the present. The escape is brutal and inelegant. Wards scream as they tear through them. House elves wail, torn between orders and old affections. A section of the East Wing collapses under a misfired curse, sending up a plume of dust that looks, for an instant, like the smoke from a funeral pyre. When they finally breach the grounds and disapparate with their rescued, Harry turns back for one last look. The manor stands, but it is wounded, windows shattered, roof scorched, its proud symmetry broken. He understands with a clarity that feels like the snapping of a charm that he will never cross that threshold again. Whatever happens in the coming battle, the house that raised him has become what it always threatened to be. A battlefield, a grave for a name he will no longer answer to. And somewhere inside, Draco still has to decide which side of that grave he will stand on. The manor has already become a grave for the Malfoy name when it finally happens. Not in the drawing room, under the Dark Lord's gaze. Not before an audience of masks and marked arms. It happens in a corridor that smells of smoke and old polish, where the walls remember better days and the carpets are scattered with broken replica frames and fallen plaster. Draco turns a corner at a run. Harry is already there. For a breath, they are boys again, 2 pale faces, 2 raised wands. The muscle memory of 100 childhood duels snapping into place. Then the roar of distant curses reminds them that this is not a game, that the house they once raced through is now a battlefield in truth. Traitor, Draco says, and the word comes out hoarse. It costs him something to say it. You sold us to them, to him. Harry does not flinch. The green of his eyes looks almost black in the flickering light from a burning tapestry behind him. I didn't sell anything, he answers, voice low but steady. I stopped pretending that serving a murderer was a future, that this was a family worth killing for. This is important, because Draco hears in that sentence the thing he has never been able to name. The quiet terror that their entire childhood might have been a carefully curated lie, a plan built on fear and etiquette, and the constant, suffocating reminder of who owned their lives. You think they didn't save you? Draco spits. You think the others would have taken you in? Not Dumbledore, who had his weapon already forged. Not Hagrid, who had orders and a motorbike and nowhere to keep a Malfoy stray. Not Sirius, who had a prison cell waiting for him. Mother fought for you. Father risked everything. Your mother loves you, Harry says, and the words land like a spell with no incantation. But love that bows to him is still a chain. Family that demands you stand by while he carves up children is not family. It's a cult around a grave that should have stayed closed. Draco's wand hand shakes. He remembers Harry standing between him and the Cruciatus in 5th year, taking a curse meant for a Malfoy heir because, as he had said later in the infirmary, "You are my brother." That is the only story I know how to tell. He remembers Harry lying to Lucius to shield Draco's failures, sabotaging a mission so that no first year would die for a dark mark. "Move," Draco whispers. "I have to bring you in. He'll kill them. He'll kill her." Harry exhales, a sound like something breaking loose inside his chest. Then, slowly, he lowers his wand. The tactical advantage dissolves with that single, deliberate movement. "Then don't bring me in," he says. "Come with me, right now. I can't promise safety, but I can promise we stop helping him dig our graves." The corridor narrows around them. The house creaks, alive with distant screams and shattering charm work. Draco sees two futures. In one, he stuns Harry, drags his brother before the Dark Lord, watches their world burn anyway. In the other, he takes that outstretched hand and becomes what he has been taught to despise. His fingers spasm on his wand. For a heartbeat, he almost reaches. Then he breaks, not toward Harry, but away. He steps back, eyes bright and furious and terrified. "I can't," he chokes, and then he turns and runs, fleeing down a side passage, choosing neither curse nor salvation, only escape. Harry watches him go, feeling something old and fragile tear cleanly in two. The brother of his childhood is gone. In his place is a man who cannot yet decide whether he wants to be saved. He turns toward the heart of the battle, alone, and does not see where Draco's flight will lead or whose path it will cross next. The corridors burn behind him. The castle groans like a wounded animal. The war has come inside the walls at last. By the time Harry reaches the entrance hall, Hogwarts is no longer a school. It is a battlefield layered in dust and smoke and the sharp metallic scent of spell burnt stone. Giants move in the distance, spells arc through shattered windows. Somewhere above, a gargoyle screams as it falls. He steps past a boy in Ravenclaw blue who will never rise again and knows, with a clarity that is almost merciful, that the story is nearly over. This is important. The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. The protection that should have ended with his parents' deaths never truly followed him into Malfoy Manor. The Dark Lord's magic marked him twice, once as a child, once as an heir. And now, in the ruined heart of the school that tried to make sense of both names, Harry finally assembles the last piece. The snake, the cup, the diary, the ring, the diadem. Himself, he is a Horcrux. He is the last shard. He knew in fragments for months. Now he knows in full. In the quiet between explosions, his mind does something strange. It does not race forward to strategy or backward to prophecy. It goes sideways, along the thin, private path of memory that no prophecy ever accounted for. He thinks of Narcissa's hands, pale and precise, fastening his cufflinks before a ministry gala, smoothing his hair before his first journey to platform 9 3/4. The way her fingers trembled only once, when she thought he could not see. He thinks of Lucius's lessons, the cold arithmetic of power, never draw your wand first, always know who owns the room. Never forget that blood is both weapon and obligation. He remembers Draco's laughter in the manor gardens, high and careless as they chased a bewitched replica snitch through rows of peacocks, long before the dark mark and the grave weight of family expectation. And beneath those, like a second heartbeat, the parents he barely remembers. James's messy hair in a photograph that should have been a mirror. Lily's voice in the echo of a lullaby he might have dreamed. Lily was a charms prodigy, and somewhere in the deep structure of his survival, in the way magic clung to him, he can feel her work. 2 families, 2 legacies, braided and barbed. He understands now that he is the product of both houses, and yet owned by neither. Not Dumbledore, who had watched him with distant calculation. Not Hagrid, who had once carried him from rubble. Not Sirius, who had promised freedom and left only absence. Not Lucius, who tried to turn him into a weapon. Not even Narcissa, who loved him more than the Dark Lord she served. If no one owns him, who does he choose to be? The answer is simple. Terrible, liberating, he walks out of the castle and toward the Forbidden Forest, not as Harry Malfoy, heir to an old and compromised name. Not even as Harry Potter, the symbol strangers needed. He walks as Harry, a boy who has decided that the cycle of blood and vengeance will end with his body on the forest floor. The resurrection stone turns between his fingers like a small dead planet. The ghosts come. James and Lily step from the dark, their faces both younger and older than he expects, eyes bright with pride and something like apology. Behind them there is no line of Malfoy ancestors, no silver-haired patriarchs offering absolution. Instead, unbidden, his mind conjures Narcissa's face, the way she looked when she lied to the Dark Lord in the Manor's drawing room when she chose her son over her master. Her imagined voice joins the others, soft and fierce. Go on. He walks, past centaurs watching with unreadable eyes, past the memory of Draco fleeing down a corridor, past every version of himself that might have been. Voldemort waits in a ring of Death Eaters, their masks gleaming faintly. The Dark Lord raises his wand. There is a moment, thin as a breath, in which Harry stands utterly free of every name anyone has ever given him. The green light blooms. When it falls on a boy who has stepped outside prophecy, outside pure blood destiny, outside the Dark Lord's plan. A boy whose death is not obedience, but refusal. He dies as Harry. And in that refusal, something in the old magic shudders and breaks. The forest is silent when she reaches him. Silent in that dense, smothering way that means the world is holding its breath. Narcissa Malfoy steps into the ring of Death Eaters and sees a boy's body lying crumpled in the leaves. In canon, this is where the story is simple. She checks a pulse, trades a lie for her son's life, and walks back into the darkness with a secret burning in her throat. This is important. That version is already an act of rebellion against everything she was raised to worship. But here, the grave was empty in another way. The grave of her old loyalties. The grave of blood, only love. For 14 years, she has raised 2 sons in the shadow of the Dark Lord's return. Draco, blonde and brittle with expectation, and Hadrian Malfoy, the quiet child left on her doorstep by a plan she was never fully told. A child whose green eyes sometimes looked like accusation and sometimes like salvation. She kneels. The leaves are damp. The air smells of smoke and iron and old magic. Her hand, so steady at every ball and every ritual, trembles as she brushes the hair from his forehead. The glamour Narcissa has renewed 100 times is faltering. The careful Malfoy black bleeding away at the roots. Beneath it, pale skin and the faint, unmistakable lightning scar. She knew. On some level, she has always known that the story Dumbledore offered, the story Lucius repeated, was a charm laid over something harsher. Not Dumbledore, who had spoken of strategic placements and influence within Slytherin as if children were chess pieces. Not Hagrid, who had wept over the boy who lived and never once suspected that the boy was eating breakfast at a silver table under a serpent crest. Not Sirius, who had rotted in Azkaban while his godson learned to sneer in perfect pure blood cadence. Realization is not a single strike, it is an accumulation. The way Hadrian's magic flared uncontrolled near the diary. The way the Dark Lord's gaze lingered on him at the manor, puzzled and hungry. the way prophecies whispered of a child with power to vanquish, and her second son's wand sang too loudly when he held it. Now the truth is a corpse at her feet. Also everyone believes. If she calls out that Harry Potter lies here, truly dead, she might save Draco's status, Lucius's favor, the Malfoy name. If she tells Voldemort the boy still breathes, if she admits that the weapon he has hunted has been sleeping under her roof, what then? Which son survives that revelation? Her fingers press against Harry's throat. A beat. Another. Alive. She leans so close that only he can hear. Is Draco alive? The words are a knife they cut through every lesson her mother ever taught her. He does not ask why. He does not ask who he truly is. He simply whispers, "Yes, something breaks." Her lie, when it comes, is not smooth. It is not calculated. It is a decision born of 14 years of bedtime stories, of fevers watched through the night, of two boys arguing over brooms and blood status, and who mother loved more. He is dead, she tells the Dark Lord, and in that moment she chooses both sons at once. Because if Harry is carried back as a corpse, the Malfoy heir is no longer the Dark Lord's hostage, but a boy with a chance to run. Because if the prophecy child has chosen to die once, perhaps the old magic has chosen with him. Because love that defies bloodlines can be a weapon older than any wand. A Malfoy woman raised on purity becomes the hinge of the war, not through ideology, but through the simple, devastating refusal to sacrifice one child for another. The forest exhales. The plan, every plan, begins to unravel. The forest exhales, and the castle holds its breath. When Voldemort marches into Hogwarts, he does not come as a shadow in the night. He comes as a procession. Giants at the shattered doors, snatchers lining the walls, Death Eaters fanning out like a black tide along the edges of the ruined Great Hall. And at the center of it all, cradled in Hagrid's shaking arms, lies the boy they believe is dead. Harry Malfoy Potter. The Dark Lord's paradox. The grave was empty. This is important, because the boy on Hagrid's shoulder wears torn, ash-streaked robes, and on the left breast, just visible through the blood and grime, the silver Malfoy crest glints in the torchlight. A serpent curled around a shield. Old magic, old money, old allegiance. Gasps break from both sides. Slytherin students go white. Gryffindors stare as if they are seeing a cruel replica of their enemy and their savior fused into one broken body. Not Hagrid, who had carried him out of the Forbidden Forest in another life, another story. This time his sob is not just for Harry. It is for the child he once watched fly on a borrowed broom, now revealed as the heir of the house that helped build this war. Voldemort raises his arms, voice echoing off the enchanted ceiling, offering clemency, conquest, a world remade. He speaks of the Malfoy line as proof that even the proudest can bend. Lucius and Narcissa stand like ghosts at his side. Draco trembles between them, eyes fixed on the crest over Harry's still heart. And then Harry takes a breath. The movement is small. The effect is catastrophic. He slides from Hagrid's arms, lands unsteadily, and for one suspended instant he stands exactly between the Gryffindor and Slytherin tables. Red and gold to his right, green and silver to his left, a living bridge between houses that have defined and divided him since the Sorting Hat first whispered of ambition and choice. He turns his head, meets McGonagall's gaze, meets Snape's empty chair, meets Draco's eyes. Everyone in the hall knew, in that moment, that no prophecy, no plan, no elder's design could contain what he was about to do. The duel begins not with a shout, but with a refusal. "I am Harry," he says, voice raw. "Potter and Malfoy both. And I choose." Voldemort laughs, high and thin, and the first curse flies. Green meets red. Death meets disarming. But beneath the surface, older currents move. The Elder Wand strains in Voldemort's hand, answering not to theft or fear, but to the boy who had wrested Draco's wand away in the manor where this story truly began. Allegiance in this moment is not about possession. It is about who has learned what power costs. Harry has died once for this hall. He has watched Draco flinch at his father's mark, watched Slytherin children slip notes to the Dar under the table, watched the lie of blood purity collapse under the weight of real fear. He understands sacrifice not as spectacle, but as the quiet decision to stand where everyone can see you and refuse to move. Spells crash like thunder, statues shatter, the enchanted ceiling storms. Around them, the house lines blur. A knot of Slytherins, Theo Knott, Daphne Greengrass, Blaise Zabini, edge forward, wands raised, not for Voldemort, but for the boy who grew up in their common room and learned to question every pure blood lesson Lucius ever paid to teach. Others cower behind the benches, cloaks over their heads, unwilling to move, unable to cheer. This is important, because Slytherin's future reputation will not rest on unanimous heroism or unanimous guilt, but on this fractured image, some standing with Harry, some sinking to the floor, all watching as the Dark Lord's fate is decided by one of their own. The final exchange is almost quiet. Avada Kedavra. Expelliarmus, the Elder Wand spins, slow and inevitable, toward the boy it has already chosen. The curse rebounds. Voldemort's body hits the stone like any other man's. No phoenix song, no grand speech, just the sudden, unbearable silence of a world in which the war has ended in the Great Hall, beneath the banners of every house. Harry lowers his wand. The Malfoy crest over his heart is torn, but it is there. A Malfoy heir has just killed the man his adoptive family once swore to serve. Not Dumbledore, who had woven plans inside plans. Not Sirius, who had dreamed of raising him free. It is Harry, standing between Gryffindor and Slytherin, who has rewritten the meaning of both. But when the silence finally breaks, when the first voice dares to speak his name, which name will they choose? And who, in the shadows beyond the hall, is already moving to claim him? They do not say his name first, they say theirs. Malfoy, the word moves through the ruined hall like smoke, curling around broken pillars and blood-stained flags, carrying 20 years of fear and privilege and carefully curated power. This is important, because for the first time since the Dark Mark burned over a Quidditch World Cup, the name is not a guarantee of safety. It is a summons to judgment. Lucius stands when they call him, but the old aristocratic posture is gone. His cane is missing, his hair unbound, his robes torn where a curse grazed his shoulder in the chaos after Voldemort fell. The man who once walked the ministry corridors like a patron in his own gallery is now just another wizard in a line of the defeated, hands shaking as chains coil, hissing around his wrists. He knew in the instant he saw Harry, his Harry, turn his wand against the Dark Lord that the story was over. Not Voldemort's. Lucius had always planned for that grave. His own. The grave was empty because everything he had built had been a replica of safety, a hollow architecture of fear, and his son had helped bring the ceiling down. At his trial, the fall is public and precise. Witnesses recount Malfoy Manor as headquarters, as prison, as slaughterhouse. The Wizengamot murmurs when Harry steps forward, green eyes steady, Malfoy's signet still on his hand like an accusation. Does he condemn, or does he save? The chamber waits. Not Dumbledore, who had once vouched for Lucius's gold-tainted contrition. Not Hagrid, who had muttered about bad blood for years. It is Harry who decides how much of Lucius Malfoy remains alive in the world. Narcissa's place is stranger, liminal, a charm caught between protection and deceit. She is hailed in hushed corners as the witch who lied to the Dark Lord himself, who walked across a battlefield of bodies to find her sons and chose that single defiant word, "Yes, he is dead." She is denounced just as fiercely as the woman who watched children tortured under her roof and did nothing. Her name becomes both shield and curse, doors open because she is a Malfoy, eyes narrow for the same reason. In every whispered conversation about her fate, someone says quietly that Lily was a charms prodigy, that mothers do impossible magic when their children are in danger. As if that can balance the years when Narcissa did not act. Draco moves through this new world as if the floor might collapse at any step. Whether he broke with Voldemort in open defiance or simply lowered his wand and refused to cast, the result is the same. His brother walked further. Harry infiltrated, betrayed, destroyed. Draco hesitated. He will live the rest of his life in the shadow of that difference. When he speaks at the hearings, his voice catches on the words, "my father, my mother, my brother," as if each is a different language, none of them quite fluent anymore. Harry's testimony is a knife with two edges. He does not lie. He names the cruelties, the indoctrination. The nights Malfoy Manor felt less like a home and more like a beautifully furnished grave. Yet he also speaks of moments that do not fit the plan of easy condemnation. Narcissa smoothing his hair after nightmares of green light, Lucius teaching him precise, elegant magic instead of crude curses. Draco standing between him and Icaros more than once. The Wizengamot listens, weighing not only actions, but the strange, fractured love that threaded through them. In the end, the verdict is compromise, which is to say, no one is satisfied. Lucius is sent to Azkaban, his sentence reduced but not erased by Harry's reluctant mercy. Narcissa is confined to a warded estate, her wand license revoked, her movements monitored, her influence amputated but not quite dead. Draco walks free, technically, but under a scrutiny that feels like invisible chains. Weeks later, when the rubble has been mostly cleared and the ministry has remembered how to hold meetings instead of funerals, Harry goes to see them. Azkaban first. The sea claws at the black stone, the Dementors are gone, but the air remembers them. In the visitation chamber, Lucius looks older than his years, as if someone has reached in and turned down the brightness of his bones. The two of them study each other through the glass. No wands, no masks, no one left to impress. "You destroyed everything," Lucius says at last, voice hoarse. "You built it," Harry answers. The truth lands between them like a fallen wand. Neither reaches for it. At the estate, Narcissa and Draco wait in a drawing room stripped of dark artifacts, its walls bare where portraits once hung. The silence is different here, full of ghosts that are still alive. Draco's shoulders are narrower without his father's shadow, Narcissa's hands restless without a roll. They offer tea. Harry declines. The conversation is awkward, halting, circling the same unspoken center. They raised him to be a weapon, and he chose where to point himself. There is no forgiveness. Not really. Only an inventory of damage. Harry names what was done to him, what he did in their name, what he did against it. Narcissa does not ask for absolution. She asks, instead, if he is safe now. Draco does not apologize for every cruelty. He apologizes for the day he saw Harry bleeding in a manor corridor and walked past. When Harry leaves, the wards hum behind him. A softer prison than Azkaban, but a prison nonetheless. He steps out into a world where the Malfoy name is no longer a spell of fear, but a cautionary tale. The war is over. The grave is not empty, it is crowded with the versions of themselves they can never be again. And somewhere beyond this ruined dynasty, a boy who was once a weapon begins to wonder what it means to live without a master, without a manor, without a script written for him in silver and green. He steps out of the war and into a question. A simple one, printed in black ink that refuses to dry. Who is he now? The first battle is fought on the front page. Harry Potter, savior or Slytherin spy? Screams the prophet, the photograph a fractured thing where his scar and his Malfoy profile never quite align. A week later, a rival paper tries a different charm of naming. Harry Malfoy breaks with dark family. Can he be trusted? The grave was empty, but the headline writers are determined to bury one of his names. This is important, because the story the public tells about him will decide whether the reforms he dreams of will live or die. Some owls address him as Mr. Potter, as if those 14 years in the manor were a bad dream. Others write Mr. Malfoy, the ink itself wary, as though the name might stain the parchment. The Wizengamot debates which name to enter into the record when they thank him for his role in the downfall of Voldemort. They do not know which boy they are applauding. They are not alone. Harry reads the articles in a kitchen that is not a manor, fingers pressed so hard to the page that the replica newsprint crinkles like old bone. He considers the legal petition already drafted in his desk, Harry James Potter, restoration of birth name. A clean break. A public renunciation. A plan that would let him stand at his parents' grave without feeling like an intruder at his own history. Yet he also knows that to erase Malfoy is to lie. Those corridors of cold marble, Draco's laughter echoing down them, Lucius's hand heavy on his shoulder before a Death Eater meeting, they are not illusions. They are the truth of the boy who walked into this war. So he carries the contradiction into his days. At the Ministry, he moves like a Slytherin in a Gryffindor story, using the political magic he learned at Lucius's elbow to shepherd bills through committees that would once have spat his name out. He knows which pure-blood matriarch will respond to an appeal to legacy, which retired Death Eater will fold at the mention of grandchildren. He speaks their language because it was his first tongue, and for the first time, that knowledge as a weapon turned away from the grave and toward the living. Hermione refuses to let him hide behind strategy. She names his reflexes, gently and without mercy, the way he trusts pure blood testimony more quickly, the way his jaw tightens when Muggle-borns speak of dismantling old houses entirely. Ron breaks the tension with muttered comments about Harry's posh table manners. But even the joke is a mirror, showing him how deeply the manor lives in his bones. Ginny watches all of it, and when they are alone, calls him neither Potter nor Malfoy. She calls him Harry, as if the name itself were a bridge, as if there is a future in which house is an afterthought, not a sentence. In the end, the decision is not a revelation, but a slow, grave acceptance. He keeps both names. Harry James Potter Malfoy, written in his own hand, not as a badge of honor, but as a record of escape and obligation. He will carry Malfoy into every chamber where the old blood still whispers, a living reminder of what that name almost made him and what it might yet help him unmake. The next question is inevitable. What does a boy made of two legacies do when the world demands he choose only one? He chooses by refusing to choose. That is the paradox that reshapes a civilization. The savior of the Second War steps out of the grave of blood ideology, still carrying the Malfoy name, and the world has to decide whether to believe what it sees or cling to the old story of monsters in green and silver. Blood purity does not fall because of a speech in the atrium. It falls because the purest of pure blood households produces the boy who destroys the Dark Lord. This is important. Every sermon Lucius ever whispered about sacred lineage is refuted, not by Dumbledore, who had argued for tolerance, not by ministry pamphlets, but by the simple, brutal fact that Malfoy magic ended Voldemort when generations of proper wizards could not. The ideology collapses under the weight of its own contradiction. Old families watch the prophet print Potter Malfoy beside the words savior and war hero, and something in them cracks. If a child raised on tales of Muggle inferiority can turn and use that same training to dismantle the Dark Lord's network from within, then blood is no longer a guarantee of loyalty, or safety, or superiority. The grave of certainty is empty. Slytherin house changes with him. The banner in the Great Hall no longer signifies a villain's lair. It becomes the house that produced both the most dangerous Death Eaters and the boy who betrayed them. First years in Green whisper that Harry once wore the mark as a replica of allegiance while feeding information to both Snape and a clandestine order cell. Others insist he never took it, that he let the world believe he was darker than he was because the mask was a weapon. Either way, Slytherin's emblem is no longer a warning. It is a question. Policy follows perception. Harry knows the back corridors of power, the unspoken rules by which pure bloods hire, promote, and quietly exclude. He walks into Wizengamot chambers with Draco at his side and proposes binding charms on ministry, hiring to anonymize blood status, curriculum reforms that require every house to study Muggle history and magical lore, auditing of Department of Mysteries experiments that once favored old families as test subjects and gatekeepers. He does not argue from theory, he names names. He describes the secret interviews in drawing rooms, the informal recommendations, the way a Malfoy letter could open any door. There is resistance. Of course there is. Some families see him as the ultimate traitor, a boy they would once have courted for their daughters, now dismantling the very hierarchies that made him powerful. Dark remnants mutter that the prophecy was corrupted the moment Voldemort let a half-raised Malfoy live. They send threats, they send curses, they send offers. Not Hagrid, who had once carried him from rubble in another life, not Sirius, who had dreamed of raising James's son as a Black, can shield him from this particular war. His Malfoy past is both armor and target. And yet, there is a fragile hope moving through the corridors of Hogwarts and the halls of the Ministry. A world that watched a boy in Slytherin Green stand over Voldemort's fallen body cannot easily retreat into comforting myths of good lions and bad snakes. The story is more complicated now. The truth is harder. The line between monster and martyr has blurred. The question that lingers is simple and terrifying. If a Malfoy-bred savior can unmake one Dark Lord, What happens when the next generation decides what to do with the power he has left them? The prophecy does not care about house colors. It does not care about surnames carved into ancient silver or stitched onto Quidditch robes. The grave was empty of that kind of sentimentality from the beginning. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord is not promised Gryffindor Red. He is promised a choice. This is important. Neither can live while the other survives, still coils around Harry's life like a serpent, even when he grows up answering to Malfoy and sitting beneath green and silver banners. The wording never mentioned courage. It mentioned power and survival. In this story, the path to that final confrontation is not a straight corridor lit by Gryffindor torches, but a maze of Slytherin corridors, secret passages, and whispered oaths in the dark. From the start, prophecy sets the stage, but character writes the script. At Malfoy Manor, Harry learns pure-blood ideology as other children learn nursery rhymes. Lucius speaks of bloodlines as if they were destiny. Draco repeats those lessons with the easy cruelty of a boy who has never been contradicted. Yet there are fractures. Harry watches Narcissa bend the rules of Voldemort's worship every time she prioritizes Draco's safety over the Dark Lord's commands. He sees Housel's flinch. He sees Muggleborns at Hogwarts who do not match the monsters of bedtime stories. He could have embraced the Malfoy plan entirely. He does not. Not Dumbledore, who had once trusted Blood Wards and Privet Drive, could fully predict the way this serpent-raised boy would begin to question. Not Hagrid, who had never come to fetch him from a hut on a rock, could put a comforting name to the dissonance of being both Harry and Malfoy. Not Sirius, who had rotted in Azkaban for a godson he never met, could imagine the moment Harry refuses the Dark Mark, not out of Gryffindor defiance, but out of a colder, quieter conviction that Voldemort's vision is too small for the power he feels burning in his own veins. Voldemort's miscalculation is almost elegant in its arrogance. By permitting, perhaps even orchestrating, Harry's placement with the Malfoys, he believes he has turned a weapon inward, blunted it with luxury and doctrine. Instead, he arms his enemy. Harry grows up fluent in the language of influence, in the architecture of old magic and older prejudice. He learns the layout of Malfoy Manor, the habits of Death Eaters, the fault lines in their loyalties. A cupboard dweller would never have known where the drawing room wards thinned, or how easily fear could be redirected. And then there is Dumbledore. His decision to let Harry be raised in the Serpent's Nest is either a masterstroke or a near-catastrophic error. Perhaps he believes that only a child who has looked true darkness in the eye, called it father, and still turned away can truly end this war. Perhaps he is simply gambling with a life he does not have to live. The ethics are grave. The charm of greater good rhetoric wears thin when measured against a boy's entire stolen childhood. Yet in the Forbidden Forest, when Harry walks to his death knowing his blood carries both Potter defiance and Malfoy calculation, the prophecy resolves the same way. He chooses. He lets Voldemort strike. Destiny and design bring him to that clearing, but the final step is his alone. The question that follows is quieter and more dangerous. If a boy taught to worship serpents can choose to die rather than become one, what will those who inherit his victory choose to do with a world he remade? Victory does not erase a childhood. It only throws it into sharper relief. After the clearing, after the wand, after the Dark Lord falls for the final time, Harry and Draco are left not with glory, but with memory. They remember nursery duels with blunted wands, Lucius watching like a distant general, while Narcissa clapped at every half-successful charm. They remember schoolyard pranks in green and silver, hexes traded with Weasleys in corridors that smelled of polish and smoke. They remember whispered secrets in the Slytherin dorms, when the curtains were drawn and the masks could fall for a moment. And Draco confessed he dreamed of running, and Harry admitted he did not know where he would run to. They remember the bitter arguments of the war years when strategy became accusation and accusation became betrayal. This is important. The grave was empty for both of them in different ways. Harry's grave was the story of the boy who lived, the replica of a simple hero that never truly fit the boy raised among serpents. Draco's grave was the Malfoy name, a monument built on fear and influence that had already begun to crack. Not Dumbledore, who had once looked at them across the Great Hall and seen archetypes rather than brothers, understood how deep those fractures went. In the first years after the war, they do what damaged siblings often do. They vanish from each other's lives. There are no dramatic duels, no public renunciations, only distance. An owl unanswered, a Christmas invitation that never arrives. Their encounters at public events are stiff, formal, their words polished to politeness while their eyes slide away. The magic between them has curdled into something brittle. Every shared glance is haunted by what they did and what they failed to do. The informant not warned in time, the prisoner not freed. The night one of them chose the Dark Lord's command over the other's plea. Years pass. Lines etch themselves at the corners of their eyes. One day, the pattern breaks. Perhaps it is King's Cross, steam curling around the scarlet engine as small hands clutch new wands and larger hands hold on a moment too long. Perhaps it is a ministry reception, all glass and marble and carefully neutral tapestries, where they are maneuvered into the same conversational circle and there is nowhere left to stand but face to face. What do they say? Not the grand apologies the world might script for them. Draco comments almost idly that Harry's son has Lily's eyes, and Harry hears in it the confession of years spent watching from a distance, cataloguing details he had no right to know. Harry observes that Draco's daughter laughs like Narcissa, and Draco hears the acknowledgement that his mother's last. Desperate lie in the forest is the reason any of them are alive. Not Hagrid, who had carried Harry away from ruins in one life, could understand that layered gratitude. The apologies come sideways. I was afraid. I envied you. I thought you had a choice. Each sentence is a small excavation, unearthing the truth that no one else can fully grasp. What it meant to grow up as Malfoy brothers in Voldemort's shadow, to be both weapon and heir, both target and shield. They may never be close again. The years have set like concrete around certain wounds, but there is, at last, a quiet, fragile truce. A nod at the station, a shared, almost imperceptible smile at a ministry bench. A recognition that in another life, without Dark Lords and prophecies and graves that were never truly graves, they might have simply been brothers. And the world they helped remake will have to decide whether that fragile, imperfect peace is enough. Peace, in this version of the story, is not a reward. It is an X-ray. It shows what was broken, what was mended, and what was simply hidden under layers of charm and courtesy. The contrast begins with two front doors. At Privet Drive, the harm was loud, ordinary, and unashamed. A cupboard under the stairs, a plate of leftovers, a boy treated as a burden and a stain. At Malfoy Manor, the harm wore silk. Harry was not starved, but shaped, not beaten, but curated. Lucius never locked him in a cupboard. He locked him in a narrative, in a pure-blood replica of love that existed only as long as Harry mirrored the right beliefs. This is important. The Dursleys' cruelty screamed. The Malfoys' conditions whispered. Which cuts deeper? The wound you can name, or the one you must learn to doubt in yourself? Around that question coils a lattice of protective lies. Dumbledore's original plan, his insistence that Harry must be hidden, sacrificed his childhood to a prophecy and called it necessity. Lucius's household propaganda, the careful lessons about blood and power, wrapped Harry's mind in an elegant cage and called it heritage. Narcissa's final deception in the forest, her hand on Harry's chest, her voice telling Voldemort the boy was dead so she could find her son, was the purest act of maternal defiance and yet another untruth placed between Harry and the world. Not Dumbledore, who had mapped out so many futures, fully understood how each of these lies would leave a different kind of scar. And yet, love keeps erupting through the cracks in the plan. Narcissa shielding Harry from the worst of Lucius's temper, from the ugliest raids, from the meetings where the dark mark burned on forearms around the table. Draco's small rebellions, a warning slipped under a door, a wand held a fraction too low, a jewel thrown so that Harry can keep a secret. Not Sirius, who had once imagined godfathering a Gryffindor, but Sirius who still tries to steal a Slytherin child out of a serpent's nest. The Weasleys, who begin with suspicion and end with an extra plate set at the burrow table, even for a boy who wears green and silver. Care arrives from directions no prophecy charted. The grave was empty of the simple division between enemy and kin. In the middle of this, Harry stands as a living argument about identity. He carries Potter blood, Malfoy manners, and a Slytherin's fluency in compromise. He has learned strategy at Lucius's side, tenderness in Narcissa's quiet gestures, and doubt from Draco's faltering loyalty. But the moment that matters is not inherited at all, it is chosen. When he decides which brother to shield, which parent to defy, which master to betray. Lily was a charms prodigy, yet even she could not have crafted a spell as volatile as a child choosing his own definition of family. This AU does not abandon the series' core theme. It magnifies it under harsher light. Family is no longer simply who raises you or who shares your blood, but who you stand beside when every banner burns and every oath is suspect. When the manor is a battlefield, the forest a courtroom, and the ministry a grave of old certainties, the only real question left is this. When the next wand is raised, whose name will Harry speak? And whose name will answer? And whose name will answer? We return to questions like that because they expose something the original story kept mercifully veiled. In canon, there is a sense of inevitability, a quiet comfort in believing that Harry was always going to be brave, always going to be kind, always going to walk into the forest with his head high. Dark reimaginings strip that away. This is important. They remind us that the timeline we knew was not ordained, but precarious, balanced on a knife edge of chance encounters and unspoken choices. Place Harry in Malfoy Manor and the fragility of that knife edge becomes impossible to ignore. The grave of certainty is disturbed. The neat inscription that said Gryffindor hero cracks. If one conversation in Madame Malkin's robe shop becomes a lifelong brotherhood instead of a brief distaste, If the Sorting Hat's whispered offer of Slytherin is accepted instead of refused, the entire moral geometry of the war tilts. The boy who once loathed the word mudblood now hears it at his own breakfast table. The charm that once protected him as a child is replaced by a different kind of shield. A family name, a manor, a dark mark glinting on the arm that feeds him. This is where the series' moral architecture is stress-tested. Not Dumbledore, who had the luxury of guiding a Gryffindor Harry from a distance, but a headmaster who must now look across the Great Hall and see the boy who lived seated beneath green and silver banners, flanked by Draco and Pansy, applauded by those who cheer for blood purity. Can love survive when it is taught to bow before lineage? Can courage exist when every act of defiance might doom not only oneself but one's brother? A Malfoy Harry forces the story to ask whether goodness is an inheritance or a revolt. Reimagined scenes become instruments of interrogation. The sorting is no longer a moment of almost Slytherin. It is an acceptance, perhaps a whispered bargain between boy and hat. The Mirror of Erised does not show parents in Gryffindor robes, but a family united without masks, Lucius unbranded, Narcissa unafraid, Draco unburdened. The Forbidden Forest is not only a grave of old certainties, but a place where Harry must decide whether the wand he lowers is pointed away from Voldemort or away from Draco. Each familiar tableau, viewed through a Malfoy lens, throws new light on those around him, on Snape's divided loyalties, on Narcissa's fierce, almost desperate love, on Lucius's terror of losing both status and son. There is a particular catharsis in watching a hero walk a narrower, more perilous path, when every step Harry takes inside that manor could fix him more firmly in Voldemort's camp. Every deviation from darkness feels heavier, more hard-won. The victories, if they come, are not clean. They are extracted from compromise, soaked in the knowledge that another choice, another word, might have made him the Dark Lord's most loyal weapon. And when the story ends, canon does not quite return to what it was. The grave was empty. You cannot unknow that there was a version of the boy who might have worn green and silver instead, who might have called Draco brother and meant it. The next time the reader opens Philosopher's Stone, the robe shop is different, the sorting is different, the train corridor is haunted by a second possibility walking just behind the first. The original timeline remains, but it is no longer alone. It is a choice among many, not a destiny. The thought experiment lingers. It asks, quietly but insistently, if the world could have broken that way, how many other ways might it still break? The marble corridors of this timeline remember every footstep Harry ever took. From the first, they echoed differently. Not the shuffle of a cupboard child on Privet Drive, but the uncertain, careful tread of a baby placed in Malfoy arms, his name rewritten in silk and silver before he could speak it. The grave was empty in this version too. But in another way. The grave of his past, the Dursley years, the cupboard, the bars on the window. Those memories never live, never harden into the armor that once defined him. Instead, there is a nursery with dragon mobiles, Draco's crib a few feet away, and Narcissa standing in the doorway, distant at first, measuring the cost of sheltering the Dark Lord's living weapon under her own roof. This is important, because when the Sorting Hat comes down over Malfoy Harry's eyes and whispers, "Again, Slytherin would help you on the way to greatness," there is no resistance. no frantic plea for Gryffindor. He sits beside Draco in green and silver, and the story bends. The first-year duels are different. The train corridor is different. The contempt for Ron Weasley's hand-me-down robes is not a stranger's sneer. It is a brother's practiced expression, learned at Lucius's table. The tonal line is unbroken. Candlelit corridors, whispered conspiracies, choices made in half-shadow. Snape watches him with a gaze sharpened by recognition. Not Sirius, who had once promised to take Harry from the wreckage, not Hagrid, who had once carried him through the night. Snape becomes the one who sees James's jaw and Lily's eyes set in a Malfoy profile and understands what that combination can do if pointed at the Dark Lord's heart. Narcissa shifts slowly, almost imperceptibly, from porcelain hostess to secret savior. She corrects his wand grip at 11, his etiquette at 12, and his conscience at 13, each admonition a quiet charm against the ideology Lucius pours like wine. Draco is rival and mirror, the brother who wants Harry as ally, yet fears being eclipsed by the boy the Dark Lord visits in dreams. The graveyard revelation is the fulcrum. When Voldemort rises and names him not only the boy who lived, but the boy he allowed to be raised in his own image. The irony is complete. The Dark Lord's greatest threat is not the child he tried to kill, but the adolescent he thought he owned. The replica heir rejects the original master. From then, every manor dinner with Voldemort is a performance. Harry passes the wine, recites the doctrine, watches the Cruciatus fall on others, and learns to keep his hands from shaking. Agency hardens quietly. He carries the serpent's mark, but not the serpent's soul. When he finally flees to the Order, Snape's eyes are already waiting, a mirror that has been preparing itself for years. The last walk into the forest is not a Gryffindor's charge, but a Slytherin's deliberate step into shadow, a boy forged in marble halls choosing, at last, to be more than the serpent that raised him. The forest closes around him. The story is heavy. But he is still walking. He is still choosing. And that small, stubborn motion is the thing the Dark Lord never planned for. He is still choosing. And now the question turns, slowly, inexorably, toward you. If you had grown up in Malfoy Manor, beneath ceilings painted with serpents and constellations, what would it take to make you doubt the stories etched into the walls? The portraits that watch your every movement, nodding approval when you sneer at the word muggle, frowning when you linger too long on tales of blood traitors and lost causes. This is important. Because in that house, the story is not decoration, it is instruction. Imagine the dinner table, Lucius discussing ministry decrees as if they were weather, Narcissa passing the potatoes while quietly editing the world into safe and unsafe, pure and impure. You, a child, absorbing every word as if it were a charm laid directly on your bones. At what age do you first feel the hairline crack between what you are told and what your own eyes insist is alive and human across the aisle of a train, or in a crowded classroom, or in the trembling hands of a muggle-born who has done nothing but exist? Then comes the sorting. The hat brushes your thoughts, and it already knows the crest on your robes, the weight of your surname, the echo of your father's footsteps in the staff room. Do you lean into the cool, coiled pride of Slytherin, telling yourself that ambition is merely clarity sharpened to a point? Or, in the split second when no one is watching, do you dare to wonder what blue and bronze might feel like, or red and gold, or yellow and black, where loyalty is not a weapon, but a refuge? The grave was empty in Godric's Hollow. In this world, the emptiness is inside the certainty you were handed. You were told that loyalty is everything. To family, to house, to the Dark Lord whose mark glows on the arms that tuck you in and pay your school fees. At what point does that loyalty become complicity? When you laugh at a slur you do not quite find funny. When you look away as a curse lands. When you follow a brother down a corridor you know leads toward screams. Not Dumbledore, who had always believed that children could choose differently than their parents. Not Hagrid, who had carried Harry from the ruins without ever stepping into these marble halls. Not Sirius, who had run from his own family's portraits and never looked back. None of them are here with you when the choosing happens in the quiet of your own mind. Because this is not only a question of magic or house colours, it is the question every person inherits with their surname and their accent and their childhood table. Which parts of the story you were given will you keep? Which parts will you burn? So, in this timeline, who are you? The Malfoy sibling who doubles down. The one who fractures the circle from within. The one who walks away with nothing but a wand and a different name. Tell the story you would live in the comments. Tell us which house would claim you and which side you would dare to betray. But whichever version of yourself you chose, the story always circles back to the same room. 2 boys in 4 poster beds at Malfoy Manor. One born to the name. One born to the scar, both asleep beneath carved serpents and silk canopies, unaware that the grave waiting for them is not in a churchyard, but in the expectations of the adults who stand over their dreams. This is important. Because from the moment he opened his eyes beneath that ornate ceiling, Harry was never meant to be safe. He was meant to be useful. To Dumbledore, who watched from a distance and saw a potential counterweight to Lucius's influence. To Voldemort, who saw in the Malfoy heir by adoption a convenient vessel, a symbol to be paraded through marble halls and Darkmark gatherings. To the Malfoys themselves, who thought a rescued boy could be shaped into a shield for Draco, or a weapon for their cause. The grave was empty of any place where he simply belonged. And yet, in this polished prison of green and silver, he carved out something none of them planned for. A self. The boy who duelled beside Draco in the Slytherin common room and then secretly healed a Muggle-born's hexed hands in an abandoned classroom. The young man who stood at Voldemort's right hand in the drawing room and learned to keep his face a replica of obedience while his mind mapped exits, weaknesses, and the exact angle of Lucius's wand. Not Dumbledore, who had counted on prophecy and bloodlines. Not Hagrid, who had once imagined a wide-eyed child riding a flying motorbike into a world that would love him. Not Sirius, who had sworn to be a godfather and instead became a whispered cautionary tale in a house that despised his name. None of them knew what kind of magic is born when a child refuses every role written for him. There is a terrible beauty in that refusal. The tragic awe of watching a hero forged in the very fire meant to consume him, emerging scarred but unbroken. Lily was a charms prodigy, but even she could not have designed a protection like this. The shield that forms when a boy raised on pure blood dogma chooses again and again to stand between the wand and the target, even when the target is someone his family taught him to hate. And somewhere else, in a quieter version of the tale, another Harry is counting spiders in a cupboard, wearing Dudley's cast-off clothes, blowing out pretend birthday candles on the dust. He does not know marble floors that echo with the click of Death Eater boots. He does not flinch at the sight of the dark mark reflected in polished windows. His war will begin in a hut on a rock, not in a manor where his surname is spoken like a spell. In the end, both boys arrive at the same place. Harry stands between two doorways, Privet Drive behind one, Malfoy Manor behind the other. 2 lives, 2 lies, 2 graves that never fit. He turns his back on both and walks into the dark where prophecy, family, and even Voldemort's plan cannot quite follow. Because something is waiting there that none of them accounted for. Someone is always waiting in the dark tonight. That someone is you. You have walked this path with Harry Malfoy to its edge, through the grave that never fit, through the manor that was never truly home, through a childhood built on replicas of love and replicas of hate. You have watched him turn his back on both doorways and step into a future no prophecy ever named. This is important, because from here, the story no longer belongs only to him. It belongs to you. So now the question turns. If you could reach into this timeline and alter one decision, one wand movement, one whispered promise in a corridor, where would you place your hand? Would you change Snape, standing between his oath to Lily and his service to Voldemort? Would you change Dumbledore, who knew more than he ever said and still sent a Malfoy Harry back to the manor each summer? Would you change Voldemort himself the moment he realized the boy he feared most was being raised at Lucius's own table? Leave your answer in the comments, but do not leave it as a single word. Build it like a spell. Tell the story of the one choice you would bend. Perhaps you would have trusted Dumbledore if you were Harry Malfoy, surrendering to his plan in first year rather than resisting in the dungeons. Perhaps you would not. Perhaps you could forgive the Malfoys when Narcissa lies to Voldemort again, this time not only for Draco, but for the brother she has half raised in shadows. This is how a community forms, not around agreement, but around shared questions. Not Dumbledore, who had orchestrated a war from a headmaster's office. Not Hagrid, who had carried an infant from a ruined house and believed the grave was empty only of comfort, not of bodies. Not Sirius, who had lost a godson and a brother in one night. You here now arguing gently in the comments about whether Harry Malfoy ever truly belonged in Slytherin, or whether the hat should have forced him into Gryffindor and torn the war along a different seam. If you wish to walk further, you know the magic that binds us. Subscribe, so you are there when we follow Harry raised by Sirius in a cramped London flat, or Draco sorted into Gryffindor under a ceiling of starlight, or Voldemort bound by contract to teach defense against the dark arts and pretend, for one fragile year, to be only a professor. Each new voice that joins, each like, each share, is not a number. It is another wand on the table. Think of this channel as a laboratory of alternate canon, a warded room where every what-if is tested until it glows or shatters. The more of you who enter, the more intricate the plans become, the darker and more delicate the threads we dare to pull. This is important, because the original grave was empty, and in that emptiness there is room for 1,000 other stories. So stay, speak, subscribe, share this with the one person you know who still wonders what might have happened if the boy who lived had worn silver and green. Tonight, we explored what if Harry Potter grew up as Draco Malfoy's brother. Next time, we do not merely visit another timeline. We build it together.